Chapter 519. It was a violent tremor that shook the whole planet, as if the core of the planet was churning. The moment the fluctuations hit, both immortal Jinyuan and Wind Spirit instinctively felt a sense of danger. But while it was dangerous, it wasn't fatal, so their expressions were quite calm. Wind Spirit frowned as he looked at the red-haired young man in front of him. He knew that the fluctuations definitely weren't from this man. Furthermore, there was a hint of surprise on the man's face, and it was clear that he didn't know anything about this abnormal energy fluctuation. Could it be that this planet was going to be destroyed? Wind Spirit instinctively thought of a hypothesis that might not be quite correct. Basically, he had all of Jinyuan's memories. Back then, in order to find this second planet suitable for cultivators to live on, Jinyuan had spent a whole 1,000 years exploring the Milky Way on his own. In the end, he had found the one he was standing on among countless other planets. Because this planet was dry and cracked all year round, and didn't have the slightest bit of moisture, immortal Jinyuan had named it Drought Star. After spending 1,000 years, he had only found this one drought star. But immortal Jinyuan hadn't even finished exploring 1/10 or 1/12 of this vast Milky Way. Because he had to consider the time it would take for him to return, immortal Jinyuan's trip to the planet had ended very quickly, and he had only brought back this drought star. Although this planet didn't have any moisture, it actually wasn't a big problem. The most important thing was that this planet had a stable structure and was rich in spirit energy, which was what immortal Jinyuan had set his eyes on. So the moment Drought Star shook, Wind Spirit felt that the theory in his mind wasn't very reliable. But if this abnormal energy fluctuation wasn't from Jinyuan, then who could it be? To be able to cause this kind of fluctuation, it was clear that this person's strength had already surpassed true immortal level. But in the current world of human cultivators, Wind Spirit and Jinyuan were the only two people who had broken through to true immortal realm. In the short 2 seconds that the planet shook, Wind Spirit thought of a lot of things. Then all of a sudden, he felt a very warm feeling on his head. Wind Spirit looked up. He was stunned to find, it was a beam of light. Lord Ma's space transmission spell actually opened up a passageway, and it took no more than 5 seconds for Wang Ling to locate the coordinates he wanted from the Wang family's small villa. But it was in these 5 seconds that Wang Ling, who was about to emerge from the passageway, sensed the aura of someone in this space. Furthermore, they were two completely different auras. When Wang Ling sensed these two auras colliding violently, he immediately realized that someone was fighting in this space. And it was obvious that neither of them was weak. At least judging from their auras, Wang Ling felt that they were more reliable than Evil Sword God. Wang Ling hadn't expected that there would actually be people here, so the second before he was teleported, he hurriedly cast the Great Void spell on himself to make himself transparent. Wang Ling didn't use this spell very often, because once the Great Void spell was activated, it would take 12 hours for the spell to dissolve on its own. Just like the Great Fortune Art, it was a great Dao that could not be cancelled halfway. Actually, in the 3,000 Great Daos, there were many spells that couldn't be cancelled midway. After all, these were the 3,000 Great Daos, the existences that modern cultivators called Heavenly Dao. Using it and cancelling it as one pleased, how humiliating would the Heavenly Dao be? Thus, this move wasn't suitable for school. Thus, when the light of teleportation directly shone down on Wind Spirit's head like a miracle, Wind Spirit subconsciously covered his eyes. Although he hadn't fully formed yet, his visual organs were still there. This light was very dazzling to his eyes. In the distance, immortal Jinyuan also narrowed his eyes slightly, as they also felt a stabbing pain. Both of their hearts shook almost at the same time. It wasn't normal for them to actually be able to feel a stabbing pain. After becoming a venerated immortal, the heavenly eye would transform into an immortal's eye, which was called Immortal Eye for short. In terms of performance, the Immortal Eye was naturally far superior to the Heavenly Eye. Even Evil Sword God's purple investigative demon eye couldn't compare to the Immortal Eye by 1 or 2 10,000ths. But even so, they were still stung by the golden light that descended from the sky. Even Wind Spirit, who was relatively close to it, could feel his eyeballs burning. Wind Spirit gritted his teeth and endured the pain, which he hadn't felt in a long time, and almost lost his composure and cried out in alarm. However, the teleportation light quickly disappeared. When Wind Spirit opened his eyes again, he saw that the teleportation light had disappeared. When Wind Spirit opened his eyes again, he suddenly saw a flash of green in front of him. Then, he felt something meaty smashing into his face. He was actually unable to maintain his balance due to the huge impact, and was directly sent flying through the air. F***K? At the same time, Loopy Toad cried out in its heart as it was lifted up by a golden light. This was Wang Ling's golden light shield. When fighting in space outside Earth, the golden light shield also had the effect of an adaptive magic ring, which allowed Loopy Toad to quickly adapt to its environment. Furthermore, when gravity changed, it could also allow Loopy Toad to float freely in the air. Actually, no matter where the space was, Wang Ling had to strengthen Loopy Toad's golden light shield. Because in the 5 seconds he had been in the passage, he had already sensed that this space was very dangerous. And when they actually landed, Wang Ling's suspicions were confirmed. It was as if a heavenly dog had gnawed on a large chunk of the ground under their feet. There were still fluctuations of energy, and when they dissipated, the gas that was released smelled very much like gunpowder smoke. It was very obvious that someone had already been fighting. Loopy Toad floated in the air on its 4 dog legs, feeling a little unused to it. But very quickly, it calmed down and looked at the ground under its paws, which looked like it had been hit by a primordial chi bomb. Speaking of which, did it bump into something just now? Because of Little Master Ling's golden light shield, Loopy Toad hadn't felt the slightest bit of pain, even after such a violent collision. A dog. In the distance, Immortal Jinyuan looked at the green figure in the air, after the golden light dissipated with a bewildered expression on his face. Why would a dog land here? And from the looks of it, it was a dog that hadn't taken human form. But the point was that this dog had a faint layer of golden light on its body. Oh my, could that be the legendary golden light shield? Immortal Jinyuan remembered that it was an almighty halo that could only be obtained after one's body had become a sage, and after comprehending 3 or more heavenly Tao, and using the power of heavenly Tao to condense a Dharma idol. Could it be this dog was the savior? Chapter 520. Although he clearly felt that this answer was a little unrealistic, Immortal Jinyuan was someone who had seen much of the world, and he very quickly regained his composure. There were too many bizarre things these days. Immortal Jinyuan was already used to them. In fact, when he had been calculating the hexagram previously, he had felt that it was very strange, because the final result of the hexagram would always show the character G. But Immortal Jinyuan still didn't understand what on earth this G represented. At first, Immortal Jinyuan had speculated that it might be a surname, but he very quickly rejected this answer. Nowadays, whenever something happened in the entertainment circle, someone would reveal that some G was a little fresh meat with the surname XXX. That person would at least give a range. But this simple G was really too wide a range. Now that Loopy Toad had appeared, Immortal Jinyuan suddenly felt relieved. It turned out, this G meant dog. In that instant, Immortal Jinyuan suddenly felt that the principle of great Tao being the simplest really did exist. Wang Ling, who was in a state of nothingness, could clearly hear the figure of the red-haired young man, standing in the air in the distance, and looking at Loopy Toad as he sighed with emotion. G. Actually, Wang Ling's first thought was that it was the crispy noodle snacks. In the nothingness, Wang Ling watched the red-haired young man's every move. Actually, he didn't expect this red-haired young man to be the legendary Immortal Jinyuan. This was probably the first time Wang Ling had come into contact with an expert at the venerated immortal level. He could clearly sense that this Immortal Jinyuan and the person whom Loopy Toad had sent flying earlier both had the power of 2 heavenly Tao nomological powers in them. Taoist Guang's idea was completely correct. After reaching the venerated immortal level, you could indeed receive a boost from the power of heavenly Tao. As for how many you could open up, it depended on luck and talent. In fact, it wasn't Taoist Guang who had come up with this theory at the very beginning. It was just that the concentration of spirit qi in the cultivation world was getting thinner by the day, and many experts had analyzed that there shouldn't be any experts above true immortal level in the world. So the idea that one could comprehend heavenly Tao after reaching the venerated immortal level had never been confirmed. Furthermore, there were even some extremists who believed that the venerated immortal realm didn't exist at all, and that even the widespread immortal Jinyuan was just a legend. But now that he had seen immortal Jinyuan in person, the case had already been solved. First, immortal Jinyuan was indeed a venerated immortal. Secondly, becoming an immortal venerable could indeed comprehend the heavenly Tao. Third, the above 2 points actually didn't have much to do with Wang Ling. Because with 2 heavenly Tao in his body, this level wasn't enough for him at all. Although stepping into the immortal reverent realm was indeed different from being a true immortal. When he had seen General Yi and Secretary Dakong before, he hadn't felt the slightest bit afraid, but now at the very least his heart raced twice a minute. However, that was only 2 blows. Wang Ling sighed in his heart, still a little disappointed. To be honest, he felt that this immortal venerable realm was a little weak, but he still hadn't given up hope of finding the immortal's treasure house. Although this immortal was weaker than he had imagined, at least he had lived longer than him. Who knew if there was anything in the treasury that could suppress the primordial qi? Wang Ling lowered his head in thought. Senior dog. Senior dog. At that moment, immortal Jinyuan had already flown over with an excited look on his face. He kept calling senior dog, which sounded a little like he was swearing at someone. This action startled Loopy Toad a little, but because of Wang Ling, Loopy Toad very quickly recovered its composure. Little Master Ling's aura was too strong, which made Dog 2 feel extremely at ease. It knew that Wang Ling had already entered his intangible state and was standing behind it. Furthermore, Loopy Toad was protected by the golden light shield, so it actually didn't need to panic at all. And now, Wang Ling was prompting it to put on an act. Loopy Toad could only do as he was told. May I ask how I should address Senior Dog? Immortal Jinyuan was very respectful. The look in his eyes had already confirmed that Loopy Toad was the savior which his divination had foreseen. Loopy Toad wasn't in a hurry to speak, because if it was going to put on an act, it had to do it properly. Look at those true experts. Which one of them would casually strike up a conversation? It didn't even turn its head. In the face of a venerated immortal's warm greeting, Loopy Toad merely flicked its tail, as if it were a horsetail whisk. Its posture was very confident and at ease. When Wang Ling was in his intangible state, it wasn't just his entire body that was invisible. Even his aura was completely concealed. Even its aura was completely concealed, and even immortal Jinyuan couldn't detect it. Actually, this was already enough to show the gap between them. At that moment, Wang Ling stood behind Loopy Toad and quietly watched as his Dog 2 played the role of savior. Wang Ling had already understood the general sequence of events from immortal Jinyuan's mind reading, and had also synchronized the information with Loopy Toad. So Loopy Toad's expression now was that it knew what was going on. Seeing that this senior dog hadn't paid any attention to him all this time, the red-haired young man suddenly looked a little embarrassed. Just as he was about to speak, Loopy Toad directly raised a paw and pointed at the abyss under its feet, indicating for the young man to be quiet. Immortal Jinyuan was startled again. As expected of the savior, he actually knew everything. He hadn't said anything yet. In the next instant, there was a bright glimmer of light in the gloomy pit under their feet, and a black sword light slashed out from the bottom of the abyss. Senior, be careful. This is the God Extermination Blade. It's a grade 9 spell, Immortal Jinyuan warned. Loopy Toad pretended to be calm and closed its eyes. In any case, it could just leave everything to little Master Ling. It couldn't see the trajectory of a grade 9 spell at all, so it might as well close its eyes. Only grade 9. The corners of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. Standing behind Loopy Toad, he flicked his fingers at the God Extermination Blade, and an invisible air cannon shot out from between them. This was the most basic grade 10 spell, the one-finger air cannon. In fact, Wang Ling could also use 2 fingers, 3 fingers and the highest 4 fingers. But 2 fingers was level 11, 3 fingers was level 12, and 4 fingers was level 13. Because he had just arrived on this planet, he didn't know its structure very well. Wang Ling was worried that the destructive force would be too great, and it wouldn't be very polite if he destroyed the planet's core with 1 finger of air. In any case, Immortal Jinyuan had traveled outside the Milky Way for 1,000 years before he found a planet suitable for immigration. It really wouldn't be good to destroy it just like that. When this 1-finger air cannon shot out directly, Immortal Jinyuan saw that the Black God Extermination Blade, which Wind Spirit had shot out at the bottom of the abyss, didn't even have a chance to hit, and was actually directly swallowed up halfway. When spells collided with one another, there were only 2 outcomes. Either they exploded or they were swallowed up. If the energy was swallowed up, this proved that the energy density of the 1-finger air cannon was far above that of the God Extermination Blade. Immortal Jinyuan was instantly shaken. When this senior dog faced the God Extermination Blade, its expression had been so disdainful, and it had actually closed its eyes. Furthermore, it hadn't even made a move, but was actually able to launch such a powerful attack. Chapter 521. This air cannon had been fired from the front of Loopy Toad. From what Immortal Jinyuan could see, this senior dog hadn't moved at all. It just floated in the air, wrapped in a faint layer of protective golden light. At the same time, its eyes were slightly closed, and it had the air of an insufferably arrogant demon king. The red-haired young man was frightened by this aura. It was truly too frightening, and his train of thought was actually cut short for a moment. Earlier, he had been silently speculating about Loopy Toad's identity. Based on his many years of experience, Immortal Jinyuan had come up with several more plausible guesses, but he hadn't dared confirm them. At first, Immortal Jinyuan had thought that this senior dog in front of him was probably at peak venerated immortal level, but after firing this air cannon, he immediately rejected this idea, because he could already hear Wind Spirit's mournful scream at the bottom of the abyss. Immortal Jinyuan couldn't help sucking in a cold breath. Wind Spirit was his inner demon and shared the same origin as him. Furthermore, they were both at the middle venerated immortal level. Even if this senior dog was at peak venerated immortal level, it shouldn't have been able to make Wind Spirit let out such a miserable scream with just 1 air cannon. Strength that far surpassed that of a venerated immortal. Immortal Jinyuan stared at Loopy Toad in astonishment, but it still had its eyes closed with an indifferent expression. To be honest, he was intimidated by this aura, and felt that his 3 views had been refreshed. Before he had met Loopy Toad, the red-haired young man had always thought that his realm was already the highest among cultivators today. Who could have thought that there really was a realm higher than venerated immortal? That was because one had to undergo the samsara spirit tribulation to break through to venerated immortal, which in turn consumed a tremendous amount of spirit energy of heaven and earth. Inferring from the concentration of spirit energy in this era, it was indeed as scientists had said. No one could cultivate to venerated immortal level, let alone an existence stronger than that. Immortal Jinyuan had been able to cultivate to this point partly because his cultivation was indeed very high, but a large part of it had actually been luck. That was because Immortal Jinyuan had discovered an energy body that could replace spirit energy, and was even denser than it was, and he had borrowed this new energy body to reach this step. It had been an extremely painful process. When the energy body, which was even stronger than spirit energy, had filled his body, he had almost wanted to die, and his inner demon, which he now called Wind Spirit, had been separated when he had received the new energy. At the bottom of the abyss, Wind Spirit sank another few hundred meters after being hit by the cannon. However, his aura still existed and he did not die. Only one of his arms was already broken. Wind Spirit gritted his teeth and immediately used a healing spell to heal his wounds. However, the healing speed was extremely slow. Heavy damage effect. He had never thought that the spell would have such a special characteristic. Even more so, he did not expect that a level 10 spell that could easily devour the god-destroying blade was cast by a dog. This was definitely not the power of an immortal sovereign. An immortal Empyrean's destructive power wouldn't be so great, but that strike just now nearly killed him. So when Wind Spirit floated up from the bottom of the abyss, his face covered in dirt, Immortal Jinyuan was once again stunned by the scene in front of him. This was because Wind Spirit had suffered heavy injuries. His mouth and nose were bleeding, and most importantly, his right arm had actually been smashed by that attack. Standing behind Loopy Toad in his incorporeal form, Wang Ling carefully observed Wind Spirit in front of him. This was a mass of energy formed from Immortal Jinyuan's inner demon, but it was gradually turning solid and exuding an evil aura, which was stronger than that of evil sword gods. After all, their realms weren't on the same level. Wang Ling hadn't immediately killed Wind Spirit in one blow, but had held back. On one hand, it was his first time running into a venerated immortal, and he wanted to test his strength. On the other hand, he didn't want to expose his identity in front of Immortal Jinyuan at the moment, and it just so happened that this inner demon was here to experiment on. Wang Ling felt that this was simply a heaven-sent opportunity. This was an existence that had mutated from an energy body and transcended the 3 realms and the 5 elements. It shouldn't exist in this world, so Wang Ling wouldn't feel guilty even if he truly destroyed it. After that friendly and harmonious test just now, Wang Ling had indeed discovered the difference between a venerated immortal and a true immortal, because he had sensed primordial qi in the god-destroying blade just now. Although this primordial qi was far less powerful than his own. Why was Wang Ling's spell so destructive? Because it was a mixture of primordial qi and spirit energy. As Wang Ming had guessed, venerated immortals already had primordial qi in their bodies. But the truth was that the main medium for activating spells was still spirit energy. Since the primary and secondary factors were different, the effects of the spells would be completely different. At that moment, the atmosphere was extremely solemn. Wang Ling told Loopy Toad to keep its eyes closed to avoid being seen through. This Wind Spirit hadn't completely materialized yet, and its facial features couldn't be seen clearly. But Wang Ling could still sense its resentful gaze, and its entire body was filled with hostility. If Loopy Toad met this kind of gaze head-on, its legs would definitely turn to jelly. Wang Ling habitually called this kind of oppressive gaze the jelly legs stare. But this kind of stare had no effect on Wang Ling at all. Essentially, the oppressive gaze was meant to evoke fear in a person's spirit. The problem was that the primordial qi in Wang Ling's body could help him control his emotions. Not to mention the fact that he wasn't afraid at all. Even if he wanted to be afraid, he wouldn't be. So in a normal situation, he just needed to steady his mind and not meet the other party's gaze. Loopy Toad closed its eyes. As for its mind, it was protected by its own golden light shield, so there was no need to worry. Very quickly, Wind Spirit, who was floating in the air, couldn't help but grit his teeth as he realized that his immortal eye suppression didn't have any effect on this dog at all. The main point was that this dog actually didn't even open its eyes. He was actually being looked down upon by a dog. As the hostility grew thicker and thicker, Wang Ling sensed abnormal energy fluctuations churning inside Wind Spirit's body, and at the same time, its aura also soared. Senior dog, be careful. This Wind Spirit is the manifestation of my inner demon, and the hostility will make him go berserk. Immortal Jinyuan warned. To be honest, it had been a very long time since he had seen Wind Spirit in a berserk state. Before Wind Spirit's physical form had reached this level, Immortal Jinyuan had found several opportunities to almost exterminate him. But each time, at a critical juncture, Wind Spirit would go berserk. In this berserk state, Wind Spirit's combat ability was very strong. Every time it came to this, Immortal Jinyuan would have no choice but to avoid battle. That was because there was a big prerequisite to dealing with Wind Spirit, and that was that Immortal Jinyuan couldn't be seriously injured. Otherwise he could be devoured by this inner demon at any time. Senior dog, be careful, the red-haired young man shouted. At that moment, Wind Spirit had already launched his second round of attacks. He rushed over. His fist struck Loopy Toad's golden light shield. And then, his entire body was directly sent flying. Immortal Jinyuan. Very well, senior dog, pretend I didn't say anything. Chapter 522. Wang Ling's protective golden light was so powerful that even a venerated immortal couldn't break through it. However, although Wind Spirit was bounced back, he did not suffer too much damage. That blow just now was just a probing attack. He was testing the strength of the protective golden light. As a result, not only did the punch send him flying, but even his entire left arm was numb. What a powerful protective golden light! Wind Spirit exclaimed in his heart. Fortunately, he was quick-witted and did not use his full strength. Otherwise, the backlash from the protective golden light would only cause him to suffer the consequences. In this berserk state, the energy in Wind Spirit's body was abnormally restless, and the broken arm that Wang Ling had smashed apart earlier was now actually reformed with wisps of black qi. Wang Ling wasn't the slightest bit surprised. If this person had a human body, it would have been impossible for him to recover in a short period of time after Wang Ling had destroyed his arm and the heavy injury effect. However, the essence of the Wind Spirit was a high-density mutated energy body. It was not strange for it to extract a portion of the high-density energy in its body and turn it into 4 limbs. Wind Spirit pinched his new right arm as he stared at the red-haired young man in the air in the distance and laughed sinisterly. Jinyuan, are all you human cultivators so cowardly? You actually need to rely on a dog to save them? Buttface eyes couldn't help but twitch. What the hell? This guy actually discriminated against animals. You are not allowed to talk about seeing your dog like that. In the air, Immortal Jinyuan shouted sternly. Since entering the modern era, humans and spirit beasts have adhered to the principle of peaceful coexistence. As for the spirit beast contract, it's also based on equal cooperation. At the very least, we are all living beings, but you are not. Wang Ling nodded and felt that this was already pretty straightforward. To put it simply, you are not human. There was nothing wrong with what he said, but it completely enraged Wind Spirit. But don't you forget who created me. He let out a sharp shriek, and the ear-piercing sound waves rolled up a huge spirit tide. It surged wantonly, and even the sand in the vicinity was swept up. For a moment, the sky changed color, and the wind blew and clouds surged. Wang Ling looked up at the sky. Drought-Star's sky was gray without the slightest bit of light, and there wasn't a single drop of water here. But at that moment, a vast expanse of dark clouds had gathered in the sky, and it looked like it was going to rain heavily. The emotions of an immortal venerable could cause a phenomenon in the world. At that moment, Wang Ling made a second discovery. This was a very small discovery, but it could lead to an inference, and that was related to the density of the primordial qi that could be produced in the body of an immortal sovereign. Because the concentration of his primordial qi was too high, it directly had the effect of purifying his emotions. Even if he suppressed the Tao Talisman, the concentration was only restored to a normal level for Wang Ling. So he usually had a poker face and couldn't smile even if he wanted to. After wearing the talisman, the ratio of the original qi to the spiritual power in his body was 50%. If he wanted to express his emotions normally, the concentration of the original qi had to be suppressed to 15% to 20%. This was the data that Wang Ming had calculated. Wang Ling remembered that the first version of the talisman seal that Wang Ming had developed could suppress the concentration of his primordial qi to 25%. It was just that the talisman's effectiveness had been getting lower and lower over the years. Immortal Jinyuan couldn't refute Wind Spirit's point of view, because this was the truth. Wind Spirit had indeed been born because of him, and it could be said that Wind Spirit's brain contained the darkest side of Immortal Jinyuan's heart. But even so, it was also true that this Wind Spirit wasn't a normal living creature. If he wasn't eliminated, there would be no end of trouble in the future. But Wind Spirit didn't think so, because the heart demon had been separated from Immortal Jinyuan. Wind Spirit subconsciously believed that he was in fact a human. So after hearing the red-haired young man's impassioned speech in defense of Senior Dog, Wind Spirit was almost instantly enraged. After turning invisible, Wang Ling could clearly see a black stream of air rapidly swirling around inside his body. This was none other than the vicious energy produced by the heart demon, which contained arrogance, jealousy, rage, sloth, greed, lust, and lust. Usually, the Great Purification spell was Wang Ling's first choice to deal with this kind of unclean thing. But not today, because immortal Jinyuan had to personally kill this wind spirit. Wind spirit had said before that if he killed himself, or was killed by someone else, it would greatly damage immortal Jinyuan's cultivation. Thus, Wang Ling had to beat the other party to critical health, and let immortal Jinyuan personally kill him. Behind Loopy Toad, Wang Ling felt a faint resentment in his heart. Why was this the control branch he was familiar with again? What scores were the most difficult in exams? 60 and the average score were the most difficult. But in a showdown between cultivators, the most difficult was this kind of deathly situation. Wind Spirit knew that this green-furred dog in front of him wasn't simple. Since he couldn't break through the golden light shield, melee combat was definitely out of the question. Narrowing his eyes, Wind Spirit decided to directly release his ultimate killing move and destroy everything here. Jinyuan, I won't be soft today. At that moment Wind Spirit, in his berserk state, shouted softly, and his voice directly whistled through the air to shake the whole planet. It was as if he was standing in the eye of a storm, as black vicious energy swirled around him like a vortex. After a few seconds, the vicious energy around him actually started to gradually condense. He actually absorbed it. Immortal Jinyuan was also startled at this scene. In the previous few matches, Wind Spirit in his berserk state had already been very difficult to deal with in melee combat alone. Wind Spirit would wrap the vicious energy around his fists to multiply his strength, then use his Ripple Sprint spell to create an aura. But this was the first time Immortal Jinyuan had seen this move today, and he had no idea what the other party was going to do at all. After absorbing all the vicious energy into his body, Wind Spirit's body actually turned black straight away. Loopy Toad's eyes narrowed into slits as it was stupefied by the completely black Wind Spirit. Wasn't this little black downstairs? Wind Spirit smiled sinisterly as he looked at Immortal Jinyuan. Jinyuan, have you ever seen a grade 12 spell? Grade 12. Immortal Jinyuan was stupefied. The most powerful killing move he could use now was only grade 11. Furthermore, this move contained 2 of his great heavenly Dao. This was a killing move that he absolutely couldn't use unless he had no other choice. It had the power to destroy a planet. Grade 12. Immortal Jinyuan couldn't imagine it at all. Very quickly, Wang Ling noticed that the black color of Wind Spirit's body had returned to normal, and there was a small ball the size of a glass bullet on his finger, which wouldn't be noticed at all if one didn't look carefully. After Wind Spirit went berserk, he had absorbed all the materialized vicious energy and condensed it into this small black ball. Although it was very small, it gave people a feeling that the power wasn't that great. But it was just an illusion. When Father Wang was writing, readers often complained that his chapters were too short. But this was actually also an illusion. Chapter 523. A grade 11 spell was already a killer move that could destroy a planet. Immortal Jinyuan couldn't imagine how powerful a grade 12 spell could be. One of the biggest reasons why he hadn't been able to take down Wind Spirit after so much time, and hadn't been able to completely exterminate him, was that when Wind Spirit entered a berserk state, the vicious energy on his body multiplied his strength. In this berserk state, Immortal Jinyuan already found it hard to withstand pure hand-to-hand combat, and had almost been injured several times. But the red-haired young man never expected that this vicious energy could actually be combined with a spell to double its power. Furthermore, he had never seen the spell that Wind Spirit was using before, and had no idea what would happen. The black magic ball in Wind Spirit's hand floated above his palm from a long distance away. Although it was only the size of a marble, the extremely terrifying energy contained inside made the young man frown. In the next moment Wind Spirit made his move. He flew higher, and looked down from above, and the small black ball, which had originally been floating above his palm, actually flew into the sky in an instant. He spread his arms wide. Let the world feel pain. Loopy Toad. Immortal Jinyuan. Wang Ling. Somehow, Wang Ling felt that this scene was a little familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. The moment the black magic ball merged into the sky, the dark sky, which had been covered by thunderclouds, instantly became quiet, and even the clouds seemed to have stopped moving. At that moment, Immortal Jinyuan looked up at the sky, lost in thought for a moment. He knew that this was the calm before the storm. The power of this magic ball was enough to turn everything into dead silence. This was the first time that the red-haired young man had encountered a grade 12 spell, and he was shaken by this demonic power. Although a grade 11 spell could destroy a planet, it couldn't possibly be so powerful as to seal off the space of an entire planet. But at that moment, Immortal Jinyuan used the immortal eye to see that the entire drought star was like a sparrow trapped in a birdcage. It was covered in layers of that vicious black energy, which gradually shrank inward. Wang Ling also saw this scene. Although he didn't know what this spell was called, it was very obvious that this was a spell that used energy to seal off space and compress it continuously from the outside to the inside, ultimately detonating the planet's core and causing an explosion. The space has already been sealed. Senior dog, we can't get out. How many years had it been? In that moment, that fear of death welled up in his heart again, causing his jade mansion to tremble violently. He had seen many big scenes and encountered countless dangers, but none of them had brought him as much fear as this one. It had been a long time since he had felt fear. The oppressive feeling of death that came from the depths of his soul made the young man feel a little suffocated at this moment. I call this move the Heavenly Star Explosion. Feng Ling laughed evilly. There was a hint of savagery in his laughter. All of you must die today. As soon as he said this, Wang Ling suddenly felt his body grow heavier. Under the influence of this evil energy, Drought Star's gravity became even stronger. I'm leading us to the star core? Immortal Jinyuan frowned as he struggled to keep himself upright and not sink. However, the gravitational force gradually increased. In just a few seconds, the gravitational force had increased by dozens of times. Immortal Jinyuan couldn't help grit his teeth. It was extremely hard for him to keep up. But at this rate, he could only hold on for another 2 minutes at most. If it was as Feng Ling said, he would die without a doubt. After struggling for dozens of seconds, he felt his eyelids grow heavier, and he wouldn't be able to keep his eyes open. It looked like this senior dog wasn't the real savior. Immortal Jinyuan couldn't help sighing. At that moment, he turned his head to look at this senior dog next to him. Senior, it's a pleasure to fight alongside you. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad. Immortal Jinyuan sighed with emotion in his heart. He had wanted to say something like, it's a pleasure to meet you, or, it's an honor to fight alongside you. But very quickly, he realized something. This senior dog was still floating in the air as motionless as before, and there wasn't the slightest change in the expression on its dog head. The point was that this senior dog's dog fur was actually floating in the air. It seemed like it wasn't affected by the gravity at all. Loopy Toad stretched out a paw to point at the red-haired young man next to it, and a ripple spread out from its paw. Of course, this was actually Wang Ling's incorporeal form, casting a spell to fix this abnormal gravity. A grade 12 spell was strong, but no matter how strong it was, it couldn't be stronger than Heavenly Tao. Loopy Toad was all too clear on this point. Each of the 3,000 great spells that its little master Ling had mastered was a grade 15 spell. What was this grade 12 spell going to use to fight Heavenly Tao? Gravity has been restored? Immortal Jinyuan felt this change in disbelief, as the pressure on his body instantly dissipated completely. Sweeping his immortal eye over Drought Star, he saw that the layer of evil and vicious qi wrapped around it hadn't dissipated. This meant that the divine exploding Heavenly Star's spell hadn't been lifted. Furthermore, under the effect of gravity, huge sinkholes started to appear in the parched and cracked ground as it gradually collapsed. It seemed that the gravity on his body had been corrected. Immortal Jinyuan sucked in a cold breath of air. In the face of this large-scale AoE spell attack, his gravity had actually been single-handedly corrected. He once again witnessed how extraordinary this senior dog was. And just now, he had actually doubted the true identity of this senior dog savior. What a stupid idea. Immortal Jinyuan stared at Loopy Toad with excitement written all over his face. At that moment, Immortal Jinyuan made an important decision. If he won this battle, he would wholeheartedly become a dog bragger. He would follow in Senior Dog's footsteps and reach the peak of cultivation. What was going on? On the other side, Wind Spirit was also startled when he saw this, and couldn't help tilting his neck. He carefully checked the state of the spell, and found that there was nothing wrong with it. The divine exploding heavenly stars was operating normally, and the space here had been sealed off. Apart from the spellcaster, no one could escape. The divine exploding heavenly stars had increased Drought Star's gravity by several hundred times. Wind Spirit had initially wanted to see what kind of expression this dog and Jinyuan would have when they were pulled to the edge of the star's core by the immense gravity. But he never expected that the dog would somehow be able to ignore the effect of gravity. How had it done this? Wind Spirit's expression turned a little solemn. On the other side, Wang Ling had more or less finished analyzing the principle behind the divine exploding heavenly stars. Actually, it was more or less the same as Wang Ling had guessed earlier. Even with Wind Spirit's evil aura, this divine exploding heavenly stars definitely had to be fused with the nomological laws of heavenly Tao in order to unleash its explosive power. After reaching the venerated immortal realm, Immortal Jinyuan had only comprehended 2 heavenly Tao, but the crucial thing was that he hadn't grasped the essence of these 2 heavenly Tao, just like Evil Sword God from before. Thus, since heavenly Tao was fused into this spell, it would be very easy to handle the rest. Wang Ling looked up at the sky and searched for the black magic ball, which Wind Spirit had thrown into the air. Then, he directly spoke telepathically to the 2 heavenly Tao inside the magic ball. Gaia! In the next moment the clouds in the sky dispersed. Chapter 524. After that, there was a long period of silence. The world was quiet as Immortal Jinyuan and his heart demon Wind Spirit looked up at the sky. Because Little Master Ling's mind-reading ability was currently connected to Loopy Toad, Loopy Toad had clearly heard Wang Ling's telepathic message to the heavenly Tao. If it wasn't for the fact that there were outsiders here, Loopy Toad felt that it wouldn't have been able to keep its expression straight. Its little master had actually directly roared back at the heavenly Tao. What kind of operation was this? Wang Ling, who had turned invisible, also gazed at the sky, which had returned to tranquility, and sighed deeply in his heart. Sure enough, in this day and age, you still had to rely on roaring, Loopy Toad. What F*** King roaring? On the other side, Immortal Jinyuan and Wind Spirit, the product of his inner demon, were practically thinking the same thing. Immortal Jinyuan. Wind Spirit. Who could tell them what had just happened? A moment later, Wind Spirit couldn't help sucking in a cold breath. F***K. His big one had actually been cut off. No, to be more precise, it was as if his big one had directly disappeared. This scene had been too sudden, and neither Immortal Jinyuan nor his inner demon had expected it. Just a few seconds ago, after Immortal Jinyuan's gravity had been restored, he had used his immortal eye to see that the God-exploding heavenly stars spell was still in progress. Not only had the entire Drought Star been sealed in vicious chi, even the ground had started to collapse like crazy. However, in just the time it took to stare at it, all the unusual movements disappeared completely in the blink of an eye. Throughout the entire process, Immortal Jinyuan had been using his immortal eye to check on the vicious chi surrounding Drought Star. He didn't know if it was an illusion. The red-haired young man felt that rather than saying that the vicious chi enveloping Drought Star had disappeared, it was better to say that it had fled. It was as if it had encountered some natural enemy or prehistoric beast, and had instantly retreated without a trace. So, this was Senior Dog's doing? At that moment, both of their gazes involuntarily turned to Loopy Toad. It was very obvious, because they didn't know anything about this Senior Dog, who had appeared with the golden light shield at all. But the problem was, Senior Dog didn't move at all. Since the moment he appeared, he had been floating in the air. No matter how the environment around him changed, he was like a terracotta army. He stood calmly in the air with his eyes closed. and he used the most relaxed posture to neutralize Wind Spirit's attacks. This was a 12th stage spell. The power of a level 11 spell was enough to destroy a planet. Even an idiot would know how powerful a 12th grade spell was. If Wind Spirit's divine explosion of heavenly stars had succeeded, it wouldn't just be Drought Star. The link between the human world and the demon realm would also be destroyed, and in the worst-case scenario, the force of the explosion might directly rush out through the gate to another world, causing great damage to both worlds. Although it wouldn't be completely destroyed, if it were to explode, the consequences would be unimaginable. In that moment, immortal Jinyuan suddenly felt the real gap between realms. He thought that after cultivating to the immortal venerable realm, he was already standing at the peak of the world. However, there was still a mountain higher than the mountain. Immortal Jinyuan surmised that this senior dog's strength was at least at Sage Immortal level. This was a realm above Venerable Immortal. It was a whole level higher than Venerable Immortal. Rumor had it that a Sage Immortal Almighty had at least 81 heavenly Tao in their bodies. Furthermore, these 81 heavenly Tao were the minimum requirement to become a Sage Immortal. Only a Sage Immortal with 81 heavenly Tao. Immortal Jinyuan pondered in his heart, as he wondered how many heavenly Tao senior dog had in its body. To be able to neutralize the attack of a 12th grade spell so easily, the number of heavenly Tao in its body had to be more than 100 at the very least. At this thought, Immortal Jinyuan couldn't help clicking his tongue repeatedly in his heart. He never thought that there would actually be a Sage Immortal expert in this world who was stronger than a Venerable Immortal. How big was the gap between a Venerable Immortal and a Sage Immortal? Take the simplest example. For example, Immortal Jinyuan could freely travel through the Milky Way and even move a planet over. However, celestial sages could create their own planets. One was a planet porter. The other could create a planet. That was the difference. To build a planet, it was far from enough to just learn how to create a small world and a great world, because it also involved the shaping of a star core and filling in the nomological framework. These were things that could only be created after mastering multiple heavenly Tao. The red-haired young man felt that he was still far from that level. Sure enough, if you didn't compare yourself to a strong expert, you would never recognize the gap between you and them. He didn't even move, yet he easily disintegrated a Tier 12 spell. Maybe this was what a big shot was like. While the red-haired young man felt extremely disappointed, a fire was ignited in his heart once again. It looked like he would have to closely follow in Senior Dog's footsteps in the future. At that moment, the red-haired young man's eyes were already full of stars as he prostrated himself in reverence toward Loopy Toad. Senior Dog 1, do you accept disciples? Wang Ling, Loopy Toad. On the other side of the sky, Wind Spirit gritted his teeth fiercely at this scene, and the hostility in his heart bubbled up again. For some reason, when he saw the red-haired young man's expression toward a dog, he couldn't suppress the rage in his heart. Why? Wind Spirit suddenly roared. His chest heaved up and down as he gasped for breath, anger surging in his chest. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad. Wind Spirit's eyes were fixed on the red-haired young man on the other side. Why, you never showed it to me. Immortal Jinyuan was startled. Why should I? Wang Ling. Loopy Toad couldn't help letting out a huh in its heart. Wind Spirit. I was talking about your expression. Immortal Jinyuan. To be honest, after seeing his grade 12 spell inexplicably neutralized by Senior Dog, Wind Spirit knew that he already had no chance of winning this fight. Because this was already his most powerful killing move, and also his final trump card. A moment later, Immortal Jinyuan stared at Wind Spirit and couldn't help sighing softly. Wind Spirit, are you jealous? Because it hadn't completely materialized. Wind Spirit's facial features weren't fully formed, and only a rough outline could be seen. Wind Spirit instantly clenched his teeth, as if he had been poked in a sore spot. Jealous? You say I'm jealous? Why should I be jealous? You created me. And now you're doing everything you can to destroy me. He lowered his head gloomily, his whole body trembling. So I won't let you off easy. In the next moment, Wind Spirit moved again. He pounced directly at Immortal Jinyuan, wanting to hug him. At that moment, Wang Ling, who had turned incorporeal, suddenly sensed the strange energy inside Wind Spirit's body condensing like crazy. Did he want to self-destruct? Wang Ling raised his hand and cast the Great Suppression spell. Wind Spirit's entire body froze, and at the same time, he felt the restless energy in his body calm down once again. It wasn't just his body. Even his aura and realm had regressed in that instant. At that moment, the red-haired young man stared at the heart demon incarnation, which was only a few meters away from him, and was slightly absent-minded. Still not attacking. At that moment, Loopy Toad couldn't help reminding him, now that Wind Spirit was completely suppressed, and even his realm had regressed, this was the best chance for Immortal Jinyuan to kill him with his own hands. Because of what Wind Spirit had said earlier, Immortal Jinyuan was also pondering it in his heart. I'm sorry, Wind Spirit. You shouldn't have appeared in this world. Immortal Jinyuan stretched out one hand and pressed it against Wind Spirit's hair, which looked a little like a caress. Wang Ling noticed that at that moment, the red-haired young man was smiling at Wind Spirit. Wind Spirit already couldn't hold back his tears. Boom! In the next moment, there was the sound of an explosion from Immortal Jinyuan's palm. This person, whom Immortal Jinyuan had been entangled with for a long time, and whom he called Wind Spirit. Chapter 525. This world was full of all kinds of helplessness to begin with. Before Jinyuan had truly and thoroughly destroyed Wind Spirit, he had hated it to the bone. This was an energy body that had transformed from his inner demon, and had the same memories and abilities as him. Even after it had taken on a physical form, it had the same appearance as him. Wind Spirit's existence was like a mirror, except that it reflected the darkest side of Immortal Jinyuan's heart. Everyone had a dark side, even the peerless cultivators, and the righteous swordsmen, who roamed the Jianghu with swords all had dark sides. Because where there was light, there was always darkness. There were also places where light couldn't be found, however. When it came to dark things, people's first instinct in the depths of their hearts was always to escape. That was their most unreal self, and also their truest self. Thus, after the primordial chi had filled his body, the inner demon had evolved into Wind Spirit, and Immortal Jinyuan had always thought of a way to kill it. However, after Wind Spirit had truly been reduced to ashes, he had felt a little lonely in his heart. It was a very strange feeling that he couldn't put into words. But the moment he had killed Wind Spirit, the red-haired young man had felt a little heartache. This scene also made the incorporeal Wang Ling ponder deeply. But after destroying the inner demon, did it disappear completely? Of course not. The inner demon always existed, and couldn't be completely destroyed. A lot of the time, powerful cultivators in high positions would choose to go into seclusion for a long time, not to advance their realms, but to stabilize their minds and suppress their inner demons. Desires were always endless. After reaching a new height, they would always want to break through to the next level. As long as you were on the path of cultivation and growth, you would definitely encounter all kinds of things that would prompt the birth of your inner demon. Immortal Jinyuan's inner demon was just a product of an accidental mutation, and it wasn't just because the primordial chi had cleansed his mind. This was just one of the reasons, and the specific reason for it was unknown. But this incident gave Wang Ling a wake-up call. Did he have an inner demon? Of course he did. It was just that the primordial chi was currently controlling his emotions. If the primordial chi was truly controllable one day, an inner demon would be born. The greatest courage a person could muster at this time was to face their own darkness head-on. And the hardest thing for a person to break through was to surpass himself. He wondered how he would deal with an inner demon like Wind Spirit in the future. To be honest, after dealing with Wind Spirit, it wasn't just Immortal Jinyuan. Even Wang Ling and Loopy Toad sank into a long melancholy. This lesson was very real and very profound. Sometimes, the lessons brought about by a battle were far more profound than what was taught in textbooks or in class. As the saying goes, true knowledge comes from practice. The same logic applied to cultivators now. But in a society where the rule of law was universal, The younger generation of cultivators, in Wang Ling's generation, basically learned mostly theory. Apart from the agriculture, military training, and actual combat classes, which were arranged by schools every year, there were really too few opportunities for them to engage in actual combat training. Moreover, the most important premise of these officially arranged practical training was safety. But this was precisely the most insignificant part. Not so long ago, heroes had always been born in troubled times in the cultivation world. Every year at the National Cultivators Congress, representatives would propose increasing the number of opportunities for practical training and setting the difficulty of it. As long as it wasn't fatal, it didn't matter if one was seriously injured. Because no matter how serious an injury was, modern cultivation technology and all kinds of elixirs could be used to recover without leaving any sequelae. A lot of people felt that the younger generation of modern cultivators were mostly flowers raised in a greenhouse. Although it was a pretty good era of peace now, who could guarantee that this peace would last forever? The red-haired young man floated in the air. After exterminating Wind Spirit, his palm didn't fall, but stared in the direction in which it had disappeared and pondered for a long time. During this time, Wang Ling had already collected the energy source on Drought Star according to the designated coordinates using the energy harvester he had given to him. Wang Ling didn't know whether this abnormal energy source was primordial qi or some other special kind of energy. Furthermore, it was too thin, and there were a lot of other gases mixed in here. Wang Ling couldn't make an accurate judgment, and would only know after Wang Ming compared it with the equipment. When Wang Ling came back with the energy, he noticed that the red-haired young man who had been deep in thought in the air was actually holding a red diamond-shaped crystal in his hand. The red-haired young man broke out in a sweat as he asked Loopy Toad, "Senior Dog, do you know what this is?" The red-haired young man had also suddenly seen this crystal. Not long after Wind Spirit had been exterminated, he had noticed glittering dust gathering in the air, and then slowly coalescing into a crystal like this. The corners of Loopy Toad's mouth twitched. Sage? Sage stone? Wang Ling. Goddamn sage stone. Wang Ling felt that this crystal looked a little familiar. He searched his memory bank based on the crystal structure, and then found something called a heart demon stone, which was very similar to this crystal. He sent a telepathic message to Loopy Toad, and it was responsible for passing on the message. Do you know about the heart demon stone? Heart demon stone? Immortal Jinyuan was blank. In order to find a way to restrain Wind Spirit, he had looked up a lot of information on heart demons, and it seemed that he had seen some information on this heart demon stone. Unfortunately, all the information he had looked through were ancient texts, and there wasn't even a single picture of it. Now that he was reminded very quickly, the red-haired young man recalled something. So this is the heart demon stone. This was an energy crystal obtained after eliminating the heart demon. It was mainly composed of 90% solid primordial qi and 10% rare metal elements. According to the ancient texts, the heart demon stone could be used for cultivation. After defeating the heart demon, you could cultivate with the help of the stone. If you held the stone in your mouth during a battle, you could even directly increase the concentration of your primordial qi and increase the power of your spells. The heart demon stone was very rare. Furthermore, basically anything that could be found in ancient texts from that era couldn't be bought in the modern cultivation world. Immortal Jinyuan sighed. This was his only gain from eliminating Wind Spirit this time. But for some reason, he still couldn't be happy. At that moment, the red-haired young man suddenly turned his head to look at Loopy Toad. By the way, how did Senior Dog get here? Loopy Toad looked away, not daring to meet the red-haired young man's gaze. I just happened to pass by. Nonsense. It couldn't answer that it had been brought here by the toilet, right? Chapter 526. Loopy Toad's answer was actually quite ambiguous, but out of respect for Senior Dog, the red-haired young man didn't think too much about it. Sometimes, it was really possible that he had made a small mistake while traveling through space and accidentally fell down to save the world. Actually, it was possible that he had saved the world. There were too many things in this world that couldn't be explained with common sense. Moreover, Jinyuan felt in his heart that big shots generally had very unique ways of thinking. Senior Dog definitely had its own unique reasons for being able to cultivate to such a high realm. On the other side, Wang Ling had already collected the gas data that Wang Ming had given him, and was going to let Loopy Toad go. To be honest, this fight with Wind Spirit this time had given Wang Ling a deep understanding of the strength of a venerated immortal, which was actually a little disappointing. He had thought that a venerated immortal was already very strong, but unfortunately, this level of combat strength wasn't enough at all. Although a venerated immortal had already begun to master the use of heavenly Tao, their comprehension of it was still far from enough. To be proficient in a heavenly Tao, one had to spend a lot of effort to cultivate it. Furthermore, when it came to comprehending a heavenly Tao, it actually depended a lot on luck. That was because a heavenly Tao was divided into many characteristics, and the strongest characteristic of all heavenly Tao was that it was proficient in everything. Of the 3,000 great spells that Wang Ling had currently mastered, all of his characteristics were of the highest level. So there were times when even Wang Ling himself felt that he was a little too strong. Wang Ling had originally wanted to ask more about the Immortal's treasure house, but after the battle, he instantly lost all interest. At that moment, Loopy Toad couldn't help asking the red-haired young man, "What are you going to do after this?" This wasn't Wang Ling's question, but Dog 2's own. Jinyuan pinched the Heart Demon Stone and sighed. "I'll use this Heart Demon Stone to restore Drought Star to how it was before." "You're quite obsessed with finding a second planet." Loopy Toad smiled. "There's nothing I can do about it." The red-haired young man shrugged his shoulders. While he seemed to speak very casually, he actually felt a little regretful in his heart. Although there's still a long time before the spirit chi of heaven and earth is completely used up, given the current rate of extraction of the Earth's environment, it might be destroyed before the spirit chi is used up. Senior should know this better than me, right? Loopy Toad turned its face away a little awkwardly. Of course. Although all the countries have signed the International True Immortal Convention to protect the spirit chi of heaven and earth as much as possible, the damage to the environment is real, said Immortal Jinyuan. The International True Immortal Convention that he mentioned was an agreement signed by all the countries in the world. All the true immortal experts had put their fingerprints on it and swore an oath. According to the convention, in order to protect the spirit chi of heaven and earth that had been overexploited on earth, all perfected immortals were not allowed to use the samsara spirit tribulation to ascend to immortal venerables. On one hand, the samsara spirit tribulation consumed too much spiritual chi of heaven and earth. It was very likely that the spiritual chi of an area would be sucked dry in a short period of time, resulting in a spiritual chi hole. As a result, a large amount of spiritual chi was lost along with the hole. On the other hand, there were currently no immortal venerable powerhouses among the leaders of the various countries. Therefore, advancing from a true immortal to an immortal venerable was actually a move that broke the balance of power between the countries. And in order to achieve long-term peace in the modern cultivation world, the International True Immortal Convention was born. So the truth was that General Yi, Marshal Jiang, Secretary Sun Dekong, President Qi, Minister Shi, the 10 founding generals actually had enough resources to advance to venerable immortal level. However, these resources referred to materials other than spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Only spiritual chi of heaven and earth was special. It was a product of nature, and once it was used up, it would be difficult to maintain. Thus, there were currently 2 major research topics in the scientific world. The first was how to develop a new method for true immortals to advance to venerable immortal level without using the old method of extracting the spirit chi of heaven and earth, like the samsara spirit tribulation, without putting too much burden on the natural environment. The second was whether it was possible to develop an instrument that could replace spiritual chi of heaven and earth, or generate it. These 2 studies sounded easy, but they were in fact very difficult. Every 6 months, All the major countries would hold a joint meeting of experts to share and discuss their research. So far, however, there had been no practical solutions, and many of the theories put forward were even fantastical and unworkable. Given this premise, there were in fact a lot of people like immortal Jinyuan who wanted to develop a second planet. Wang Ling knew quite a bit about this. This was the first time he had ever scored full marks in a science class in junior high school. And it was also the first time in his life that he had ever scored 100. Furthermore, Father Wang hadn't blamed him for doing so well. Because at that time, everyone in his class had scored 100. So, you created the gate between worlds to hide this drought star that you found? Also, I heard that the gate between worlds has descended on the human world dozens of times. Was it because you were conducting an improved version of the test? At that moment, Loopy Toad asked a very important question. It would have been better if it hadn't asked this question. But when it did, immortal Jinyuan started to sigh in his heart again. As expected of Senior Dog, it even knew that it was the one who had invented the gate between worlds. Senior, you misunderstand. I invented the gate between worlds purely to build a bridge between the demon world and the human cultivation world. If I really wanted to deal with the spirit chi of heaven and earth, I thought it would be a good idea to connect with the demon world and discuss countermeasures with them. But little did I know that the gate between worlds could be used. Speaking up to this point, immortal Jinyuan sighed. The last few times it suddenly descended, it was all because of wind spirit. In the end, the rumor was that I was the one doing a performance test for the gate between worlds. So this was the truth. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad nodded inwardly. Wang Ling could directly tell that immortal Jinyuan wasn't lying. This actually made sense. Given Jinyuan's personality, summoning the gate between worlds to destroy a city didn't make sense to begin with. Before leaving, Loopy Toad sighed and looked at the extent of Drought Star's damage. The battle just now had already destroyed 1/6 of Drought Star's surface. 1/6 might seem small, but Drought Star was an entire planet. Even if it was smaller than Earth, it was still a huge area. Young man, work hard. Before leaving, Dog 2 pretended to be proud of its age and experience as it greeted Jinyuan. In fact, in some ways, it wasn't just Dog 2. Even Wang Ling actually had a good impression of immortal Jinyuan. Nowadays, there were too few people who chose to quietly sacrifice themselves for the greater good of humanity. Although choosing to move to the second planet was a pretty extreme idea, at the very least, Jinyuan was contributing to the sustainable development of humanity in the future. Senior, wait. At that moment, the red-haired young man called out to it. Senior Dog, will we ever meet again? Loopy Toad turned its head. We'll see when the time comes. At that moment, Wang Ling was already stamping his foot. As long as they dodged 3 times, Lord Ma would send them back. Senior Dog, this is for you. As soon as he said that, the red-haired young man threw a jade pendant at Loopy Toad, which caught it firmly with its dog paw. The moment it saw the jade pendant, Wang Ling's eyes lit up. Chapter 527. Wang Ling hadn't expected immortal Jinyuan to actually hand over his immortal seal so generously. This was something that could only be condensed after reaching the true immortal realm, and represented the power of faith. There was usually a difference between a main seal and a branch seal. Generally speaking, an immortal seal was given to a believer or disciple to use to summon the owner of the seal when they prayed in a critical moment. But Jinyuan didn't dare be careless. He was extremely respectful of Senior Dog, so he directly handed over his main seal. The biggest difference between a branch seal and a branch seal was that the owner of the seal had to decide whether or not to show up after praying. But once the owner of the main seal decided to summon it, no matter where they were or what they were doing, they would be directly teleported over. This was a venerated immortal's main immortal seal. When Loopy Toad held the immortal seal, it did its best to suppress the churning emotions in its heart. Immortal Jinyuan was very polite. Senior Dog, please don't stand on ceremony. You must accept this immortal seal. This time, thanks to Senior's blessings, this world has been saved in Drought Star, which I worked so hard to find. This junior has nothing to repay you with. Senior dog, please keep this immortal seal. If senior is busy, you can summon me at any time. You want to run errands for me? Loopy Toad was startled. However, the red-haired young man's answer was simpler and more brutal than Loopy Toad had imagined. No, I want to be senior's dog. Loopy Toad. Wang Ling. Wang Ming waited in the room for a while. Sitting cross-legged on Wang Ling's bed, he couldn't help feeling a little excited as he thought about something. After so many years of studying primordial qi, he had finally made progress, which was great news for him personally. Actually, before Wang Ling had taken the collector to collect it, Wang Ming had already guessed in his heart that this special energy source was definitely primordial qi. But he still needed to compare it with Wang Ling's primordial qi based on the data from the experiment. Otherwise, if it wasn't, where would he put his face as the strongest brain? In the end, Wang Ling came back a little earlier than Wang Ming had imagined. In less than half an hour, Lord Ma had brought Wang Ling and Loopy Toad back. Wang Ming came to the bathroom door and sniffed, then said, "Did you guys fight?" Loopy Toad was surprised and looked up at him. "How did you know?" "There's a smell of gunpowder on you," Wang Ming said. "We do research and do experiments, and we have to make all kinds of reagents, so our sense of smell is also very important. Don't look at me like this, my sense of smell has actually been strengthened. There is a chip inside that can multiply my sense of smell. In fact, my sense of smell is not necessarily weaker than that of those cultivators." "About what level?" Loopy Toad asked with great interest. "The chip will definitely be upgraded in the future. My current sense of smell is barely at the nascent soul stage," Wang Ming answered proudly. Loopy Toad thought this was already very awesome. It was rather unbelievable that an ordinary person could improve his sense of smell to the level of the nascent soul stage with a chip that could strengthen the sense of smell. But very quickly, Loopy Toad suddenly realized a problem and looked at Wang Ming in amazement. "How can you see, little master?" Wang Ling was now in his intangible state, but it was as if Wang Ming had seen Wang Ling and greeted him normally. Furthermore, this intangible state couldn't be cancelled midway. It had to wait for 12 hours to run out. So Loopy Toad was very puzzled. How could this guy see him? Wang Ming spread his hands, crouched down, and rubbed Loopy Toad's head as he sighed. If you've ever been stared at by a dead fish's eyes, even if he's completely invisible next to you, you can actually sense it through your sixth sense. In fact, Wang Ming preferred to call this feeling BrotherCon intuition, Loopy Toad. Wang Ling. In this incorporeal state, everything Wang Ling touched would become incorporeal, including the collector in his hand. So he simply put it on the table and let Wang Ming pick it up himself. "Take it, I'll look for you later if there's anything." Wang Ming sighed inwardly. When he got back this time, he would be locked up for a period of time. He couldn't go back on his promise to old Qi. The soonest he could come back again would be a month later. Ling Ling? Wang Ming put the collector away. He guessed that Wang Ling was sitting in the chair in front of the desk, so he stretched out his hand to feel Wang Ling's soft hair. In his intangible state, Wang Ling was completely invisible. No scientific instrument, cultivation spell, or eye technique would be able to detect him, and even his aura would disappear completely. But this intangible state could be touched. So when Wang Ming touched himself, Wang Ling sweated in his heart. He could actually touch himself like this. He suddenly wondered if Wang Ming had a pair of eyes that could only see him. Loopy Toad looked at Wang Ming and sked. "You're really amazing. What's so special about it? I pretty much know his habits. Don't look at how I'm only grabbing his hair now. I can also pinch anywhere else." As he spoke, Wang Ming flexed his slender fingers and gestured as he spoke. The corner of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. In its heart, Loopy Toad started to sigh with emotion at the breadth and depth of Huaxiao culture. Although its language wasn't good, it still knew a thing or two about rhetoric and word analysis. The word pinch had been used well. Wang Ling had used precise words to deeply portray the inseparable and strong brotherly feelings between the two brothers. Unstained from the mud, untainted from the water, unenchanted from the ripples. It sounded very dirty, but in fact it was a little elegant. By the way, What kind of trouble did you run into over there? Wang Ming returned to the topic at hand. He had originally just wanted to tease Wang Ling. Since he couldn't come back for a month, teasing him a little before leaving was simply too good. How could he normally have this kind of opportunity to tease Wang Ling up close? Loopy Toad didn't have anything to hide, and simply told Wang Ling about immortal Jinyuan and wind spirit. Wang Ming scared in amazement when he heard this. It turns out that this big shot immortal Jinyuan really does exist. I always thought it was just someone else bragging. Loopy Toad nodded. That's right, big bro. I was also very shocked. Wang Ming. But according to what you said, immortal Jinyuan's wind spirit was also a venerated immortal. It shouldn't have been easy to deal with, right? Why did you two come back in less than 30 minutes? Loopy Toad narrowed its eyes. Big bro, have you ever played a MOBA game? Wang Ming. Loopy Toad. Have you ever seen a one-sided game last more than 30 minutes? Chapter 528. Jai Yin had initially set a time limit for Wang Ming's visit this time, and couldn't stay at the Wang family's house for too long. However, they had already run out of time while waiting for him to use the collector to collect the energy source. But Jai Yin hadn't come up to urge him. This was all thanks to Mother Wang's godly assistance downstairs. Two women in a play. As long as there was a point of entry, there would be a lot of topics to explore between them. After all, before Mother Wang had officially become a housewife, she had been Numinous Mother, a powerful novelist who had inadvertently taught two epic-level killers. Furthermore, she had a very high EQ and was very talkative. Once she started talking, there was no stopping her. It wasn't until Wang Ming came downstairs that Jai Yin realized that she had run out of time. Before leaving, Jai Yin added Mother Wang on WeChat. This was Jai Yin's private account, which Wang Ming also had. Jai Yin had forced him to add it. Jai Yin didn't have any WeChat moments. Apart from forwarding some major official announcements, she didn't have any private messages. After entering the research institute in particular, it had already been several months since she had posted anything new. Thank you, sister. Standing at the door, Jai Yin gave Mother Wang a military salute. You're welcome. Come by often when you have time. Mother Wang smiled, and as Jai Yin turned to leave she said, I wish you success. Jai Yin blushed, but Wang Ming felt baffled. She usually had a gloomy expression on her face, but now her cheeks were flushed. Wang Ming felt that Jai Yin was actually a little feminine at that moment. Although Wang Ming usually liked to joke about Jai Yin's gender. To be honest, Jai Yin was actually quite pretty. Both long and short hair were distinctive. Perhaps because she had been in the army for a long time, Jai Yin still liked to keep her hair short and unisex. It wasn't as short as a buzz cut, but it wasn't as long as the ear-length hair that women usually wore. When they got into the car, Wang Ming heard Jai Yin humming a little tune. He was startled and felt that Jai Yin wasn't herself today. What are you and my aunt talking about downstairs? Why are you so happy? It's nothing, it's just a normal academic discussion. Jai Yin started the car and gripped the steering wheel, her face quickly returning to its usual cool demeanor. Wang Ming. About what? Jai Yin said succinctly, men. After hearing this, Wang Ming shuddered. Then my aunt, what did she say? Auntie and I have discussed it in many ways. And we agree that if you want to capture a man's heart, you must first capture their stomach. When Jai Yin said this, she couldn't help glancing at Wang Ming out of the corner of her eye. I was just talking to Auntie about the 2.0 upgraded version of the dragon pork chop. When we get back to the station, I'll fry it for you to try. Wang Ming was on the verge of tears. Big sister, I beg you, I still want to live a few more years and contribute to the country. Jai Yin pursed his lips. Don't worry, I'll give it to old Chi first before giving it to you. Wang Ming was even more frightened. Then don't, big sister, you have to think twice. Jai Yin. Wang Ming. Murdering the 10 founding generals is a major crime. Jai Yin. July 16th, the 12th Sunday of the semester. Loopy Toad ran off again that morning, but Wang Ling knew about it. Before leaving this time, Loopy Toad had told Wang Ling that it was going to look for Little Silver. Wang Ling had never had any objections to Loopy Toad and Little Silver's interaction. Dog 2 didn't have many friends to begin with, and Little Silver had just entered the city and was more of a homebody. So it was actually good for them to get to know each other more. Furthermore, Wang Ling had Loopy Toad bring the Spirit Beast, Holy Beast, contract to Dog 2 this time when Dog 2 was looking for Little Silver. Little Silver had been waiting for this contract for a long time. It just so happened that the midterm exams were almost over, and there were basically only a few subjects left. After Wang Ming and Jai Yin left last night, Wang Ling had straightaway drafted the contract. This could be considered an explanation for Little Silver. After the midterm exams were officially over next week, and the district sports meet was over, there would be a very long period of leisure before the final exams. Not long after Dog 2 left, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sent him a message. Wang Ling skimmed through the contents of the message. The gist of it was that his and Little Silver's plan to look for president by last night had failed. There were a lot of reasons for this. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal guessed that there might have been a problem somewhere, and some information had been leaked in advance. In short, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Little Silver had made a wasted trip last night, and hadn't been able to draw out that president by. Wang Ling stared at the message and sighed. As expected, this was a cunning person who wasn't easy to deal with. What kind of people were the hardest to deal with? Scheming people were the hardest to deal with. The old devil had been caught because of love, the master of Immortal Mansion had been caught because of his conceit, and evil sword god had been caught because of his chinibyu. But from what Wang Ling knew of these three people, so far, none of them could match up to this president by in scheming. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Wang Ling's views were the same, and he quickly sent a message. Brother Ling, Brother Little Silver, and I made a wasted trip last night. This person must have already caught wind of it, and it'll be even more difficult to catch him now. Although there was no clear evidence at the moment, Mr. Lu's testimony was basically credible. If this president Bai really was the mastermind behind the extermination of the holy beasts back then it was enough to show how meticulous this person's plan was. It could even be said that he had planned ahead. Wang Ling frowned and replied, "Do you have a problem with that?" To be honest, Wang Ling couldn't think of a better way to deal with this matter. The method that Mr. Lu had provided to find President Bai was probably the most direct way. Now that the plan had failed, he didn't think that President Bai would show up so easily. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded and replied, "Yes. I have two ways." It was clear that after coming back last night, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had pondered this for a long time. Although Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's realm wasn't high, he was smart and had the courage to court death. The key was that this great death-courting senior still had the soul suppression ring which Wang Ling had given him. So it could be said that he was even more fearless now when it came to courting death. Wang Ling waited for a few seconds, and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal swiftly replied with a complete plan. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's reply was as follows. The first way is to find that mysterious informant in the forum. Based on what the informant knows about the Demon Hunters Association, I believe that this person definitely knows President Bai very well. But that person has hidden his location, and Little Black can't find him. If Brother Ling can ask Senior Wang Ming for help, he might be able to find a way. The second way is to sacrifice Brother Little Silver. According to Mr. Lu, the Wuji umbrella in President Bai's hands contains a total of 49 holy beast skins, but it's still missing one before it's completely finished. I've already confirmed this with Mr. Lu, and he can say with certainty that the last holy beast skin is that of the Silver Unicorn clan. When he saw the second plan, Wang Ling shook his head without hesitation and answered resolutely with two words, no. Protect the last holy beast and hide Little Silver's identity at the same time. This was what Wang Ling had agreed to when he had brought Little Silver to live in the city. Chapter 529. Wang Ling's attitude was actually already very clear. This President Bai had to be caught. As the main culprit behind the extinction of the holy beasts back then, Wang Ling felt that his sins were already so grave that they could already be described as too numerous to count. However, tracking down and capturing President Bai had to be based on protecting Little Silver. This protection wasn't just for Little Silver's safety, but also for his personal information. Almost everyone now knew that the holy beasts were already extinct, and apart from those who had participated in the Immortal Mansion operation with him the last time, no one else knew Little Silver's true identity. Even the people in the group who had participated in the Immortal Mansion incident had all chosen to keep quiet after their return and hadn't leaked any information. Thus, Little Silver's identity was absolutely safe now. Wang Ling felt like throwing away a watermelon to pick up a sesame seed by revealing Little Silver's identity to lure out the master of Immortal Mansion. To be honest, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had completely expected this answer. He had actually guessed that Wang Ling would definitely answer like this. Ling Junren was a person who attached great importance to comradeship, and there were many times when people also habitually attributed this to fetters. Given Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's understanding of Wang Ling, when he had first thought of this plan, he had already felt that it wouldn't work. As for why had he deliberately brought it up when he knew it wouldn't work? Actually, it had been Little Silver's one-sided request. Little Silver had always been looking for an opportunity to show off to his master. While Wang Ling had texted Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal in reply, Little Silver had been standing next to him, picking at his snow-white feet as he watched. The text was very concise and to the point, and could be said to have Ling Junren's unique style. Although it was a little short, Little Silver still felt deeply moved. I knew Master would definitely refuse. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was taken aback. If you knew, then why did you make me ask? This is a test, Little Silver said proudly as he crossed his arms and pulled out a stack of books from under his butt. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal glanced at the covers. These books were How to Make Your Master Love You More, 100 Ways to Capture a Man, and When a Masochist Meets a Sadist. The third book frightened Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Damn, Brother Little Silver, you have feelings for Brother Ling? No, I wouldn't dare. Little Silver pulled his neck back. The third book is a bonus. Don't be fooled by the book's title. It's all serious college courses. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. What specialized course? Look, this page is full of them. Little Silver opened the book and pointed at the table of contents. I happened to read the study of wax dropping in the last few days. The corner of Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's mouth twitched. Sure enough. Was it because he didn't study enough? Or had he graduated from university too long ago? Come to think of it, he has a double doctorate. But what is this wax drop study? Why hadn't he heard of it before? It's written in great detail, and it even describes the founder of this profession. Founder? N. The name is translated from English. I think he's a foreigner. The English translation of the name is Clay's Wax Dance. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal suddenly felt old. The online chat continued. In that case, we can only think of a way to find the informant. Also, we need to strengthen Mr. Liu's protection. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal quickly typed as he put forward his package plan. In addition to finding the informant, Mr. Liu's safety was now extremely important, because he was currently the only witness who could come forward to testify against President Bai in court. If something happened to Mr. Liu and President Bai wasn't caught, then there really would be no one to testify against him. Wang Ling texted Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to send him the original link to the post, and he would try to ask Wang Ming to track down the informant. Little Black might be at his wit's end, but Wang Ming might have a way. At this point, there was no point in panicking. They could only wait for further information from Wang Ming on the search. Before closing the chat window, Wang Ling told Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal that Loopy Toad would come to his house later to look for Little Silver. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal immediately replied very politely. By the way, it seems that this is Brother Dog's first time at my house, right? Don't worry, Brother Ling. I'll let the security guard know later, and they'll send a car to take Brother Dog to my door. Wang Ling stared at the screen for a long time, deep in thought. As expected, the high-end villa district was different. There was actually a special car to pick up visitors. Yet another classic case of people being inferior to dogs. This was Loopy Toad's first time going to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's home. Little Silver had in fact invited Loopy Toad to be a guest several times before. This guy already completely regarded Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's house as its own home. Furthermore, from his online chats with Little Silver had actually discovered a lot of Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's little secrets by staying at home all day. Of course, Loopy Toad didn't know exactly what these secrets were, because Little Silver had used these little secrets to get Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to brush Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's hair in his beast form. Furthermore, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't just brush Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, but also give him hair conditioner. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had beautiful black hair to begin with, and he used about 2 bottles of hair conditioner at home every month, which was actually enough. Since Little Silver's arrival, hair conditioner had become another large daily expense for Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. The difference was that previously, they bought it by the bottle, but now they bought it by the box. But Loopy Toad usually didn't think that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had any complaints. It felt that Grenade-throwing treated Little Silver like a younger brother. Although Little Silver was older than Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, in the end, his mental development wasn't as mature. After all, this great death-courting senior was already recognized as a veteran in the circle. For someone as inexperienced as Little Silver, it actually wasn't excessive at all for him to call him senior. To be honest, Loopy Toad had thought that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's life would be pretty tough, but now that it thought about it, it felt that this guy was enjoying it. It really wasn't easy to raise such a monster who stirred up trouble at his side. So online, Little Silver's nickname for Loopy Toad was Dog Boppy. In turn, Loopy Toad's nickname for Little Silver was Monster Silver. One silver and one dog, hurting and happy with each other. Chapter 530. The villa that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had bought in Wenxian Garden was in a high-end villa area, and the people who lived there were either rich or respectable. The villa that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal lived in was in a single-family villa area, and the house prices there were frighteningly high. The villa was divided into a connected area and a single-family area. The houses in the connected area were actually more affordable, but Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had initially preferred to live alone. But sometimes, after living alone for a long time, it was inevitable that he would feel a little lonely, so Little Silver's arrival could be considered a spice to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's life. About an hour after leaving the Wong family's small villa, a green figure appeared in the sunlight at the entrance of the Wenxian Garden Villa district. It was Loopy Toad's first time going to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's villa, but it had already gone out on its own several times, so it wasn't to the point of getting lost. In any case, even if Loopy Toad couldn't find its way around Songhai City, it just had to give Audiobook a call, and someone from a nearby branch could immediately take this green-furred forgiveness dog that had lost its master away. However, that was only when there was no other choice. Audiobook had actually been quite busy recently. It could be said that he was badly battered by the Demon Hunters Association. Apart from that, the big shots, who had been sent to Songhai First Prison, were still at the stage of having their evidence appraised, and the verdict hadn't been finalized yet. It would be at least half a year before they would be put on trial. But that didn't mean that Audiobook had been idle during this half a year. He had also been a participant in the previous major events. And not only had he been a participant, he had also been the overall commander of the operation, and had personally approved all aspects of the process. Signature, stamp, review and approval. Every step was the same, and only after the end of the first step could they continue. It hadn't actually been long since Audiobook had been apprenticed, but it really hadn't been easy for him to bear so much pressure. He had planned to prepare a birthday present for Wang Ming on Army Day on August 1st, and had actually been thinking about preparing a gift for Audiobook as well, which could be considered his first greeting gift since becoming Audiobook's apprentice. But he hadn't thought about what to give her. Loopy Toad waited for a while on the opposite side of the road from the Wenxian Garden Villa complex. It had already sent Little Silver a text message to ask him to come out and pick it up, But 10 minutes had already passed, and there was still no sign of little Silver. Could it be that this fellow didn't see it? Forget it. The corner of Loopy Toad's eye twitched, and it planned to use the old way to choose an outer wall and climb over it. However, the defensive measures of Wenxian Garden's high-end villa district were too good. It jumped onto the outer wall and stood on top of it, patting it with its paw. It found that there was a layer of transparent enchantment, like a glass cover. When it patted, it would make a pung 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 sound. This hardness, it wouldn't even be a problem for it to withstand the bombardment of a soul formation cultivator. As expected of a high-class villa district, even the protective measures were so airtight. Loopy Toad walked several dozen steps to the side and realized that the outer wall of the villa was shrouded in a barrier that not even a bird could fly through. So the plan to invade the outer wall had failed. At that moment, Loopy Toad took out its phone and saw that little Silver still hadn't replied. It instantly despaired. Now that it had no other choice, it could only try to walk through the main entrance. Sighing in its heart, Loopy Toad jumped off the outer wall and walked through the main entrance again. But just as it reached the entrance, it was startled to realize that the way the security guards at the entrance were looking at it wasn't quite right. Is it this dog? It looks like it. The two security guards spoke in low voices, but Loopy Toad could hear them very clearly. In an instant, Loopy Toad's mind was filled with cases of pet hunters pretending to be adults in the news to capture spirit beasts. For example, there were pet hunters who would pretend to be security guards in residential areas and capture unsuspecting spirit beasts strolling in residential areas. Could this be the Demon Hunters Association's revenge? The moment it met the security guard's eyes, Loopy Toad was almost instantly on guard. It turned out that this group of people had already set up a trap here and had been waiting for it. Loopy Toad instantly thought of a countermeasure. It had to think of a way to escape first. Furthermore, there was no guarantee that this group of Demon Hunters Association wouldn't block its way, so running away was useless. It had to seek help from an acquaintance. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's home was in the villa, so Loopy Toad had to find him first. So at this thought, Loopy Toad exchanged looks with the security guards and immediately raised its paw to point at the sky. Look, mischievous blue moon. Maybe it was because these 4 words were too magical or too charming, but the security guards actually directly followed the dog's paw and turned around. Loopy Toad felt that it had tried this trick time and time again. It had used the same trick to deal with those bone dragon men from the Demon Hunters Association last time. The moment the security guards turned around, Loopy Toad tore off its lackeys and ran into the villa. When the security guards turned around, they suddenly thought of a few lines from a song. Looking forward to a stroke of luck and an impact. What a wonderful encounter! Over the top of the mountain and layers of white clouds. Whereas the green light, Buttface speed was too fast. It directly turned into a green light in front of their eyes. The security captain was stunned, and then he hurriedly knocked on the heads of the 2 team members next to him. What are you spacing out for? Why aren't you chasing after it? You must have scared it. Loopy Toad hadn't run more than a few steps when it realized that a group of security guards were chasing it on scooters. There were 5 of them. It was quite a big scene. Furthermore, there was actually a small sports car behind the 5 security guards. Loopy Toad was stupefied at this scene. In order to catch it, the Demon Hunters Association was going all out. But Loopy Toad actually thought that this group of people might not be from the Demon Hunters Association, and might just be pet hunters from another organization. At a time when the country was cracking down on the illegal trade of spirit beasts, how bold could this group of people be? In broad daylight, they were openly snatching a dog from a high-class villa area. Speaking of which, where were the villa's security guards? Were they so poorly managed? Didn't they know that their own security guards had been disguised? As Loopy Toad ran, it glanced at the people chasing it behind it. Logically speaking, when a pet hunter captured a spirit beast, the quieter the better. But this group of people was making such a ruckus that it was as if they were afraid people wouldn't know what they were doing. Loopy Toad felt that something wasn't right. As it ran, it realized that there seemed to be more and more people behind it. Not only were there people on scooters, there were also people who were directly chasing it on foot. Loopy Toad couldn't take it anymore. It stopped at the next intersection and turned around to ask, "Why are you chasing me?" The point was, it didn't have any syrup. Seeing that Loopy Toad had stopped, the dozens of security guards also stopped chasing it. The security guards roared in their hearts in unison, F***K. It's finally stopped. This dog can really F***King run. Panting heavily, a captain trotted over to Loopy Toad and saluted. "Mr. Dog, are you here to see Mr. Grenade Throwing?" Loopy Toad nodded weakly. Then, the captain opened the door of the sports car behind him. "Mr. Dog, get in. We're here to pick you up." Loopy Toad. Chapter 531. To be honest, this misunderstanding was actually a little big, but Loopy Toad felt that it couldn't be blamed. As soon as it entered the door, several people had already stared at it maliciously. Anyone in its shoes would have misunderstood it. And the most important thing was that it had run away. But this group of people were still relentlessly chasing it, so it would have been strange if it hadn't run away. At that moment, Loopy Toad suddenly thought of a foreign prank show in which 100 people would be arranged at a street corner, and when a passerby passed by on the road, they would directly rush out and chase the passerby. This was the embodiment of instant awareness. Although they didn't know exactly what had happened, the first thing anyone would think of was to protect themselves first. When the squad leader drove Loopy Toad to Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal's door, it was actually still feeling embarrassed. Who knew that its first visit to Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal would cause such a mishap? When they entered the door, Loopy Toad saw the squad leader pull Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal into a small corner and give him a report on what had just happened. "Mr. Grenade Throwing, your dog." "Oh, it's not mine, it's my brother's dog. You're my guest today." "So it's like that." The squad leader rubbed his head. "Mr. Grenade Throwing, I think there's something wrong with your brother's dog's mental state. We wanted to say hello just now, but it seemed to be frightened. We chased it for a long time before we brought it here." Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal broke out in a sweat. Actually, he felt that he had been careless in this matter, since the recent turmoil at the Demon Hunters Association hadn't subsided. Although Brother Dog looked indifferent on the surface, it was highly vigilant when it was outside. Any unfamiliar gaze could make it suspicious. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have had the security guards make such a big fuss, and would have directly told them to let him in. "Thank you for your hard work." Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal took out a pack of Immortal Spirit cigarettes very politely. "Give some to the brothers later." These cigarettes were quite expensive, and most people couldn't smoke them. However, Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal didn't have the habit of smoking. The cigarettes at home were given to him by corporate partners on the forum during the holidays, and there were still a lot of them piled up at home. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal wasn't in a hurry to deal with them, and simply put them all at home to use as gifts. The captain didn't stand on ceremony. He immediately put on a smile and accepted the cigarette. "Thank you, Mr. Grenade Throwing." This was actually very common in high-end villa areas. Although this cigarette was very expensive, it was only a tip of 10 to 20 yuan for the nouveau riche in the villa area. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal waved his hand. It's fine. If my friend's green-furred dog comes again, just directly open the gate and let it in. It will find me on its own." "All right, Mr. Grenade Throwing." The squad leader nodded. Suddenly he thought of something and said, "Oh, that's right, Mr. Grenade Throwing. Our villa area has a pet center that provides free medical assistance and psychological counseling services for the pets of the villa owners." Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal nodded. Of course he knew about the pet center, but he couldn't just say that his brother's dog had a mental problem. Thus, Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal simply said, "You don't have to worry too much about that. Have you heard about the Demon Hunters Association recently? That's why my brother's dog is more vigilant. It'll be fine in a few days." "I see." The squad leader suddenly understood and then sighed. "But Mr. Grenade Throwing, I personally suggest that you do some psychological counseling as soon as possible. Sometimes being too tense isn't a good thing. Grenade throwing senior immortal already didn't want to argue with this squad leader anymore, because he knew that the pet center in the villa area was currently holding an event. It was true that the owner's pet medical treatment and counseling were free, but some of the special services inside weren't free. Things like hair care, hair dye and perm. Based on Grenade throwing senior immortal's personal experience, he felt that if he continued to talk with this squad leader, the topic would eventually shift to applying for a membership card. Thus, Grenade throwing senior immortal could only politely refuse. I still have to entertain it. Squad leader, please go ahead. Also, the pet center may not be able to help brother dog's mental condition. The squad leader. Why? Grenade throwing senior immortal casually made up an excuse. It was bitten by a dog before. He said it very seriously, and when he said it, he almost believed it himself. The squad leader. When he came back to his senses, Grenade throwing senior immortal was already gone. When Loopy Toad entered, it noticed a hole on the first floor. This was the hole that Little Silver had punched out the last time Wang Ling had come. Grenade throwing senior immortal hadn't patched it up, and had simply left it there. Then, Grenade throwing senior immortal had smoothed out the edges of the hole a little, so that it would at least look better. Loopy Toad poked its head into the hole, and happened to see Little Silver sitting cross-legged on the broccoli sofa in the basement, meditating. No wonder he hadn't seen the text message just now. On the coffee table in front of the sofa was a crispy noodle snack bag, which Little Master Ling had enchanted. Loopy Toad had just jumped into the hole when Little Silver let out a long breath and muttered, cultivation complete. So fast. Loopy Toad was stunned. Little Silver laughed. Master's crispy noodle snacks are really useful. I feel like my spirit energy has improved a lot again. Saying this, Little Silver shook the crispy noodle snack bag on the table, which was already tied up with a rubber band. I wanted to cultivate today, but when I heard you were coming, I took a small bite. I never thought that it would take me so long to digest Master's crispy noodle snacks. Little Silver licked his hands clean and licked the powder off his fingers. The corner of Loopy Toad's eye twitched. Why didn't you finish it in one go? Little Silver shook his head. In one go? How could I? I still have to catch up on TV shows tonight. Loopy Toad almost spat blood when it heard this. This was already developing into a nerd. Little Silver counted on his fingers. Think about it. I have to make time to eat every day. I have to make time to catch up on TV shows. I have to make time to read comics. And I have to make time to figure out how to make Master like me even more. Finally, I have to make time for Grenade throwing to brush my fur. And now I have to make time to digest Master's crispy noodle snack to speed up my cultivation. There really isn't enough time. Loopy Toad, how much does it cost you? Little Silver waved his hand. Not expensive, just a few million. Speaking up to this point, Little Silver cast a glance at Loopy Toad. By the way, when can I move in with Master? Together? Don't even think about it. Chapter 532. Little Silver didn't believe Loopy Toad's words at all, and his first reaction was that this dog too was probably lying to him again. Given Master's level, he had too many ways to make money. How could he be poor? In fact, Little Silver had always thought that the income of modern human cultivators was based on their realms, and that the higher their realms, the more they would earn. For someone like Grenade throwing, who hadn't reached itinerant immortal realm, he was already making a lot of money. He didn't even blink when he spent several million a month. How could Master be weaker than Grenade throwing? Seeing Little Silver's skeptical expression, the corners of Loopy Toad's eyes couldn't help twitching. It knew this guy wouldn't believe it. The truth was that Little Master Ling was very stingy and thrifty. He never spent money extravagantly, and every penny was carefully calculated. All of this was based on the values and consumption values that Father Wang and Mother Wang had instilled in Wang Ling since he was a child. Boys should be raised in poverty. This was the view on money that Father and Mother Wang had instilled in Wang Ling from a young age. Although Father Wang's income was very high, he still limited Wang Ling's monthly allowance to let him know that it wasn't easy to make money. This was a feeling that most people wouldn't experience before they started working. Wang Ling's age in particular might not be as rich as Lotus Sun's family, but at the very least, they didn't have to worry about food or clothing, and didn't have to worry about working or earning money until they started their internship in university. These problems were too far away for most children, but time passed by very quickly. As parents, Father and Mother Wang couldn't help Wang Ling control his primordial qi, but at the very least, they had done a lot of work for him as he grew up. When a person had absolute power, it was too easy for their mentality to change. Father Wang was still writing books now, and had read a lot of similar stories. Mother Wang had also been a writer before, so her imagination was very strong. In the past, the couple had always fantasized about what they would do if Wang Ling turned into a Chinibyu devil. When Wang Ling was very young, Father and Mother Wang even dreamed several times of him floating in the air and yelling at the dense crowd of human cultivators watching him from below. A bunch of ants. Why should I, Wang Ling, explain what I do to you? These were all stories that Mother Wang shared with Richard when she went grocery shopping and took it out for a walk. Every time it thought of this, Loopy Toad's green dog fur couldn't help shaking. But it also couldn't expose its little Master Ling's shortcomings in front of Little Silver. There was a very important condition in the Spirit Beast contract. No matter what the situation was, the Spirit Beast could not undermine its master. There were some things that could be seen through, but not spoken out. Buttface understood this point very well. Little Silver didn't believe it now, but he would definitely understand later on. Sighing in its heart, Loopy Toad used the swallowing spell to spit out the Spirit Beast contract, which its little master had given it previously. This one was for Little Silver. Wow! Master wants to sign a contract with me. The moment Little Silver saw the contract, he was so excited that he almost jumped up from the sofa. He picked Loopy Toad up from the ground and rubbed the dog's head wildly as he shouted, "You dog skimmer! I didn't expect you to be so reliable this time." Loopy Toad narrowed its eyes helplessly. "Be gentler. I've been losing a lot of hair recently. If you keep rubbing me, I'll go bald." Little Silver. It's fine. If I go bald, we'll learn from Lord Island and open a live stream room. We'll form a team and call ourselves De Silver. Loopy Toad. Little Silver let go of Loopy Toad and put it down. By the way, how should I sign this? Loopy Toad shook its dog fur as it suddenly remembered that this was Little Silver's first time signing a contract, and he didn't know the process. In fact, it was also Loopy Toad's first time. It had been a proper Demon King before. When had it ever signed a Spirit Beast contract with anyone? Little Silver was naturally the same. He was a holy beast, and very likely the last holy beast in the world today. His status was even more distinguished. But there were some things that were unfamiliar the first time, but familiar the second time. On the side, Loopy Toad said, "There are 2 copies. You just need to put a blood stamp on the contract." "Oh, that's easy." Little Silver directly bit his thumb, and very skillfully pressed his thumb's blood stamp on the 2 contracts. The contracts instantly took effect, and in front of Little Silver's eyes, the 2 contracts turned into specks of golden dust and disappeared. When Little Silver came back to his senses, the contents of the contract had already appeared in his mind. Every word was like a soul brand, appearing vividly in his mind. Little Silver's movements were so fast that Loopy Toad was dazed. "You're going to put your thumb on it just like that. Don't you want to look at the contents of the contract?" Little Silver waved his hand. "What's there to look at about a big thigh contract, Loopy Toad? Big thigh contract." Little Silver looked at Loopy Toad in amazement. "Didn't you sign the contract to hug his thigh?" Loopy Toad was silent. It actually had nothing to say in response. Little Silver closed his eyes and sensed the connection between Master and him that had formed in the depths of his soul after signing the contract. It was as if they were connected by a thread of nothingness. He had lived for 8,000 years, and since the extinction of the Holy Beast race, he had spent almost every day and night in fear. But this contract gave Little Silver a sense of fulfillment and security that came from the bottom of his heart. Little Silver sked. Signing a contract feels so magical. Even if Master isn't by my side, it feels like I'm sleeping with him. Loopy Toad. This was the first time it had heard this description. But the truth was that the words were crude. Loopy Toad. In the future, if there's any danger you can't resolve, you can directly use the power of the contract to summon Little Masterling, you know? Of course I know. The moment the contract was formed, I knew what to do. Little Silver put his hands on his hips and smiled mysteriously. Hee hee. I feel like no matter how I court death in the future, I won't have to be afraid. Loopy Toad. It's better if you don't. After all, not every great death-courting senior was called Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. After chatting with Little Silver in the basement for a while, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's voice came from the first floor. Brother Dog, why don't you stay for lunch? All right, Loopy Toad replied. In fact, Loopy Toad could also think of what to eat. First of all, this lunch would definitely include Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's favorite broccoli, and secondly, it would be takeout for Little Silver. Sure enough, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal replied very quickly. I just picked broccoli here. If Brother Dog doesn't want to eat it, you can have takeout with Brother Little Silver. There's no dog food at home. Brother Dog is very particular. It's fine, Senior Immortal is too polite, said Loopy Toad. Then it turned to Little Silver. What do you usually eat for takeout? Little Silver spread his hands and answered matter-of-factly. The restaurants nearby. I ordered all of them, and they actually tasted pretty good. About half an hour later, a truck drove into the Wunsian Garden Villa estate. This whole truck. Chapter 533. This wasn't the first time this truck carrying Little Silver's orders had come, and the security guards at the entrance of Wunsian Garden were very familiar with it. When they saw the license plate this time, they straightaway let the truck through. Of course, this truck wasn't a delivery service, but a third-party delivery person, whom Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had specially hired. After Little Silver's orders were placed, the delivery person would drive the truck to pick up the food. The route was directly designed like the bus route, and the container on the truck had been specially modified, so that there was no need to worry about the food getting cold at all. It would be delivered at the same temperature as it was received. When Loopy Toad followed Little Silver out to collect the orders, it saw an unprecedented spectacular scene. After the delivery truck stopped, the little brother in the driver's seat immediately ran to the back to open the container. Another little brother was sitting in the container, and the two of them helped to unload the goods. There were 10 boxes in total, and they were all filled with Little Silver's orders. Loopy Toad's eyes twitched at this scene. How much did you order? Little Silver shook his head. Not much. I've been on a diet recently, so I eat less. This is half my usual amount. Loopy Toad sucked in a cold breath. In the past, it could actually eat this as well, but its current body wasn't enough to support its appetite, so at this stage, Loopy Toad was still relatively frugal. It was said that after a spirit beast gained the power to take human form, its appetite would greatly increase. To be honest, Loopy Toad was actually a little worried. It was quite frugal now, but what would it do if Little Master Ling couldn't afford to feed it in the future? The movements of the two delivery men were very skilled. The goods that were unloaded from the car were handled with care. Each box was also written with the brand name of the third-party delivery company. No soup spills, which meant that during the delivery process, not a drop of soup would be spilled. If it spilled, they would have to pay 10 times the amount. Thus, the entire company's slogan was 4 words. No soup spilled, you'll be compensated. Since these two little brothers had been in charge of delivering Little Silver's food this month, they were very familiar with him. After the goods were unloaded, one of the little brothers smiled and started to check the list with Little Silver. Hello, Mr. Silver. Thank you for using the No Soup Spilled delivery service. Now let's check your order. 100 portions of spirit feather braised chicken rice, 200 portions of soup dumplings, 1,000 portions of octopus balls, 100 portions of hot and sour noodles, 500 portions of top-grade duck soup, 100 kilograms of devil fruit, 1 ton of Sea King seafood. The hot food is packed in layers, and each box has been expanded. After Mr. Silver is done eating, you can leave the box and trash at the door, and we'll send someone to pick it up. Thanks. Little Silver smiled faintly. See you tomorrow. The two young men bowed, then got into the truck and drove away. With a wave of his hand, Little Silver put the 10 boxes away in his storage space. Based on Little Silver's way of eating, he would choose to eat them one by one. In any case, these things wouldn't go cold in the boxes. Little brother. Little spirit looped little ling loopy looped little brother. You eat. For me, filling my stomach is the most important thing. Nutrition doesn't matter at all. Little Silver sighed. Apart from Master's crispy noodle snacks, other tonics have little effect on me. I get hungry easily after eating them, so I might as well not eat them at all. Loopy Toad couldn't refute this. After all, Little Silver was a holy beast. The holy beast heart and blood in a holy beast's body were natural miraculous self-healing medicines that could help a holy beast recover faster from serious injuries. However, it was also because of their blood that holy beasts were very resistant to medicine. In the past, those unparalleled holy medicines that could make holy beasts enter a state of abundant spirit energy had gone extinct one after another after the extinction of holy beasts. Hence, Little Silver had long since given up all hope on the market for these so-called holy medicines that could replenish spirit energy. These holy medicines were useful for human cultivators, but had limited effect on holy beasts. Eating them couldn't increase their strength, and they couldn't fill their stomachs, so they might as well order takeout. But seeing that Little Silver had ordered so much takeout, and this was only half the usual amount, Loopy Toad was extremely alarmed. I thought holy beasts didn't have a desire for good food. What do you mean a desire for good food? Little Silver seemed to have a problem with this term. Only when you're full will you have the strength to cultivate. Those old cultivators in those health shows on TV talk about fasting. That's all nonsense. Loopy Toad. Little Silver might have ordered a lot, but he also ate very quickly. Loopy Toad was actually quite afraid of this. After all, its current body was that of a dead Akita, and Akitas weren't spirit beasts to begin with. Why could it cultivate? This was entirely because it had originally been a Demon King soul. Furthermore, Little Master Ling had actually helped it improve the Demon King Heart Sutra to a large extent for it to be able to cultivate to second class and transform its ordinary dog body into a spirit dog's body. However, even if it now had a spirit dog body, there were still all kinds of risks if it didn't take good care of itself. Little Silver ate very quickly. He opened the 10 boxes and gave Loopy Toad some food from each box before he started his gluttonous mode. In just half an hour, half of the boxes had already been emptied. Eating so fast isn't good for digestion. Also, it's easy to lose shape if you eat so fast. Loopy Toad poked a small octopus ball with its paw and chewed it slowly. Little Silver swallowed the thing in his mouth and wiped his mouth with a wet wipe. It's fine, I won't get fat. Loopy Toad. This was so annoying. Little Silver had ordered a lot of things for lunch, but it only took him an hour to finish them all. After eating, Little Silver leaned back on the broccoli sofa and picked his teeth lazily. Loopy Toad glanced at this guy's belly, which was still as flat as before, as if he hadn't eaten. It couldn't help sighing with emotion in its heart. What was a holy beast's stomach made of? Loopy Toad. Why do I feel like you haven't eaten anything? Little Silver nodded slightly. Like I said, I only ordered half of the things today, and I even gave you some. I'm just barely half full. Loopy Toad. What F*** king half full? After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Little Silver finally thought of something serious. By the way, why did you come looking for me today? Dog 2 opened its mouth and spat out the bone king that Wei Ji had given it. Wei Ji had won this bone from the vice president of the Pet Trainers Guild, Crying Old Immortal. When Wei Ji had given it to Loopy Toad had smelled the blood of a holy beast on it. Loopy Toad had come today to ask Little Silver to help appraise this bone's origin. This is. The moment Little Silver saw the bone, he couldn't help swallowing. It looks delicious. Are you going to make soup out of it? Chapter 534. Because he had just finished eating, and was still half full, all Little Silver could think about was food. Losing weight and whatnot. Sure enough, it was the most painful. Thinking that his next meal would have to wait until noon the next day, Little Silver suddenly felt that it would take a long time. Furthermore, the nearby takeout shops actually only had this kind of stuff, and Little Silver felt like he was about to get sick of it. He had to think of a way to open some new shops. So when he saw Loopy Toad take out a white flawless bone, Little Silver subconsciously licked his lips. For some reason, he felt that this bone was very delicious. What a pity! Little Silver stared at the bone under Loopy Toad's paw, and shook his head from a distance. Loopy Toad. What a pity! Little Silver. It's a pity that it's a broken bone. The joint was caved in by a huge force, and some of the marrow inside leaked out. Otherwise, I could stew it and stick a straw in it to suck out the marrow. Wouldn't that be delicious? When he saw that it was a broken bone, Little Silver's interest instantly drained away. Loopy Toad couldn't stand this guy anymore, and simply pushed the bone over to Little Silver's feet. Smell it carefully. It's just a broken bone. What's there? Although he said that, Little Silver still sniffed at Loopy Toad's instructions. But before Little Silver's nose could get close, his pupils suddenly contracted, and his expression turned serious. Holy beast blood? Where did you get this? Loopy Toad instantly felt a lot more at ease when it saw Little Silver's reaction. At the very least, it didn't smell wrong. And this bone was indeed the bone of a holy beast. For one thing, Little Silver himself was a holy beast, so his reaction to holy beast blood was more intense than Loopy Toad's. After all, Loopy Toad had to stick close to the bone to be able to smell the slightest hint of a scent, but Little Silver could smell it with just a light sniff. Of course, if it was too far away, Loopy Toad wouldn't be able to smell it. This was because the bone had been cleaned, and it actually had the smell of crying old immortal's Fenrir's saliva. A friend gave it to me, surnamed Wei. He's a pet trainer, Loopy Toad answered truthfully. Oh, it's him. Little Silver remembered that Grenade Throwing had mentioned this person to him before. Furthermore, Grenade Throwing had actually been playing PUBG with Dog 2 yesterday. Why did he give you this? Where did you get it? Loopy Toad. Actually, this bone isn't his. The vice president of the Pet Trainers Guild lost it to him, and the two of them made a bet. Then the vice president lost, and the bone fell into his hands. This bone has a name. It's called Bone King. It was picked up by the vice president when he was out traveling. Little Silver. I see. After saying that, Loopy Toad stared at Little Silver. Can you tell where this bone came from? A moment later, he stretched out his finger and knocked on the bone, producing two crisp banging sounds. This sound was different from the sound of ordinary bones being knocked. It was actually a little pleasing to the ear. Cupping his chin, Little Silver stared at the bone and said in a low voice, judging from the color and hardness of this bone alone, it should belong to a land animal of the holy beast race. Furthermore, I'm 100% certain that this race is more afraid of water. If it's a race that comes in contact with water all year round, the sound of bones wouldn't be so crisp. It's obvious that this race likes to bask in the sun. So according to this condition, we can already eliminate many races. Loopy Toad hadn't expected Little Silver to actually have some skill. This had indeed already eliminated a lot of holy beast races, like to live on land, fear water, love to bask in the sun. While Little Silver was thinking, Loopy Toad was also thinking in its heart. Although it had some guesses, it didn't directly say them out loud. It was afraid that doing so would interrupt Little Silver's train of thought. After a few minutes or so, Little Silver frowned and his eyes glowed with golden light. This was a holy beast's holy eye, which was different from an ordinary cultivator's heavenly eye and immortal Genuine's immortal eye, and was unique to holy beasts. An ordinary cultivator's heavenly eye was used to separate the false from the true, and could detect all kinds of illusions. The heavenly eye's strength would gradually increase as its realm increased. Above the heavenly eye, the eye that cultivators of the present world could reach by relying on their cultivation, was the evolved immortal eye. The strength of the immortal eye lay not only in its ability to separate the false from the true and detect illusions, but also in its ability to control the overall situation. It could also be used to set up illusions, and even manipulate meteorites. This was the power of a true immortal. Apart from this, there were also a lot of other eyes in the cultivation world. For example, Evil Sword God's purple investigative demon eye was one of them. Other eye techniques had different effects, and other eyes could only be created among cultivators. For example, the purple investigative demon eye had the ability to see the end of the world, which could tear through space and penetrate tens of thousands of li, allowing the wielder of the demon eye to travel freely. However, the vast majority of other eye users would become sacrificial victims. In the past, there had been too many cases of other eye users being targeted by almighties and having their eyes forcibly plucked out. Little Silver's holy beast holy eye was different from the 3 kinds of human cultivator eyes mentioned above, and couldn't be inherited by cultivators. But it had a very resounding nickname, War Puppet. Because the holy eye's greatest use was its ability to see through all kinds of flaws. In fact, Wang Ling's eyes were also quite special. Although he usually liked to call them heavenly eyes, they were even more terrifying than immortal eyes. Every time Wang Ling opened his heavenly eye, his pupils would turn into 3-petaled golden flowers. Loopy Toad had actually seen this scene countless times before. So how was this a heavenly eye? This was the king's eye. It contained the abilities of all of these eyes. The golden light emitted by Little Silver's holy eye shone on the Bone King for a short while before he turned off the holy eye's power. How is it? Loopy Toad asked. Little Silver nodded. I used the holy eye to check the bone density of this bone just now, and it's extremely high. But that's in comparison to a spirit beast. From a holy beast's point of view, the owner of this bone has a little metabolic osteogenesis syndrome. Loopy Toad, can you speak like a human? Little Silver, as the saying goes, osteoporosis. Loopy Toad, so, can you tell whose bone it is? Not yet. Little Silver shook his head. The most I can tell right now is that you've probably picked up a treasure. Loopy Toad, Little Silver, this kind of bone of a holy beast with slight osteoporosis is definitely the bone of a beast king. This bone must have come from a beast king sacred beast. Loopy Toad, what the hell? I probably need to do more research on whose bone it is. It just so happens that this bone is broken, so I can extract its composition for comparison. Speaking up to this point, Little Silver couldn't help picking up the bone. This time, Little Silver brought the bone up to his nose and sniffed it carefully. He then returned the bone to Loopy Toad. Okay, take this bone back. I already know whose bone it is. Loopy Toad was confused. Little Silver, when I sniffed it just now, I realized that it doesn't just have the smell of holy beast blood on it. It also smells like spicy hot pot. So this bone definitely belongs to Dog Saint. Chapter 535. Little Silver's expression was very serious when he said this, and Loopy Toad realized that he definitely wasn't joking. Furthermore, putting together all these characteristics, it seemed that the owner of this Bone King had already completely overlapped with Dog Saint. Actually, it made sense why crying old immortals Fenrir liked this bone so much. Fenrir was a Western devil beast, but in the end, it was still a dog. Furthermore, this bone belonged to Dog Saint, so there was no reason for it not to be excited. Thus, Loopy Toad didn't doubt Little Silver's words at all. After all, when Dog Saint had been eaten, Little Silver had been hiding in the sacred dog clan's depository of Buddhist texts. As he watched Dog Saint being turned into a spicy hot pot, he had strongly condemned and protested in his heart on behalf of all dog lovers as he drooled. Ever since the massacre of the holy beasts, the news of the holy beasts had been cut off a long time ago. Over the years, many cultivators who were traveling outside had picked up a lot of broken bones that were suspected to belong to the holy beasts. But these broken bones had been collected and sealed in the museum. As for why such a large Bone King had slipped through the net, Loopy Toad thought that it probably had to do with all kinds of coincidences. Loopy Toad guessed that first, the smell of the spicy hot pot on the Bone King had masked some of the smell of holy beast blood. So when crying old immortal had discovered it, he hadn't realized that it was a holy beast bone, and had instead washed the entire bone to get rid of the smell of the hot pot. After that, crying old immortal had brought the Bone King home. This bone had been occupied by that Fenrir for a long time, and it had also been stained with Fenrir's smell, causing the Bone King to be accidentally hidden. If Weiji hadn't given it to Loopy Toad, this bone of Dog Saint might have been completely buried in the world. At that moment, Loopy Toad stared at the bone, lost in deep thought. Could it be that all of this had been predestined? Little Silver and Dog 2 faced each other, and stared at the pure white Bone King for a long time without saying anything. Loopy Toad felt a little heavy in this atmosphere. No wonder there hadn't been any news of Holy Beast for so long. Now that they had finally found the major suspect in the Holy Beast massacre back then, President Bai. This President Bai was too cunning, and so far, they still hadn't been able to find him. Loopy Toad thought that Little Silver must be in a lot of pain right now. Although there were many kinds of holy beasts, the Sacred Hound clan actually had a pretty good relationship with the Silver-Horned Beast clan. Otherwise, Little Silver wouldn't have appeared in the Sacred Hound clan's depository of Buddhist texts to read. Thus, when Dog 2 saw Little Silver staring at the bone with a despondent look on his face, he couldn't help but stretch out a paw and pat Little Silver's shoulder. The dead are gone, my condolences. It didn't know how to comfort Little Silver. After all, he was just a forgiveness dog, not a comfort dog. You don't need to comfort me. I'm not that sad, it's already in the past. Little Silver crossed his arms and said, my biggest wish now is to cultivate by Master's side. The second is to hurry up and catch that rumor-mongering President Bai, so that we can give our Holy Beast clan an explanation. Loopy Toad felt that Little Silver's words were actually quite ambitious. But why do I feel like you're very sad? Little Silver stared at Dog Bones and pursed his lips. How am I sad? I was just thinking about a very profound question. Loopy Toad. What question? Little Silver. I was thinking, when that group of people turned Dog Saint into a spicy hot pot back then, what kind of seasoning did they use? Why hasn't the spicy smell dissipated after so long? Loopy Toad. In the evening, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal warmly invited Loopy Toad to dinner again. Because he had been on a diet recently, Little Silver directly chose not to eat. Logically speaking, Loopy Toad felt that this guy was really quite hateful. He clearly had a constitution that wouldn't put on weight, but he still kept saying that he wanted to lose weight. What were those fatties to do? Didn't they want to lose face? At dinner time, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was busy in the kitchen. Loopy Toad really hadn't realized before that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could actually cook for himself. There was no one else with this wife-like attribute. Little Silver leaned back on the sofa on one side and fiddled with his phone. Loopy Toad couldn't help turning its head to ask, how's Senior Immortal's cooking? Little Silver hummed. Not bad and very healthy. You'll know when you eat it. Speaking up to this point, Little Silver suddenly smelled something. I haven't asked you yet. What are you going to do with Dog Saint's bone? This thing actually doesn't have much of a tonic effect, whether it's for human cultivators or Holy Spirit beasts. But I don't know if it has any effect on dogs. What do you suggest? Asked Loopy Toad. My suggestion, Little Silver said. I suggest that you use this bone as raw material and find a good weaponsmith to make a satisfactory magic weapon. Furthermore, Dog Saint's bone is representative. I believe it won't be too bad if it's made into a magic weapon. At the very least, this magic weapon will have a certain deterrent effect on all dog spirit beasts. All right. Loopy Toad nodded. Little Silver's suggestion was quite constructive. Furthermore, it was currently indeed short of a magic weapon. The Toad clan's ultimate treasure was the primordial oil bead, which was a first-class holy weapon that could only be used by successive clan leaders. Ever since Loopy Toad had become a dog, its connection with this magic treasure had been severed. But given its current body, the primordial oil bead actually wasn't very suitable for it. There might be battles big and small in the future, and it needed a magic treasure to defend itself. In the end, it would have to ask Little Master for help, but Loopy Toad felt that this matter would probably be handed over to Fatty Luo in the end. Because next week was the busiest week. Although there weren't many midterm exams left, they still had to participate in the district sports meet. In addition to the relay race, at Teacher Ye's strong request, Wang Ling had also applied for the medicine ball and the Battle of Soul Pets events. All in all, next week was going to be very busy. And most importantly, it didn't have much time left after its last prophetic dream. Loopy Toad made some rough calculations. It just so happened that next week was the day it would return to the clan. It could be said that everything was piling up together. Loopy Toad also had a vague feeling that it was a pain in the ass. Let's eat. At that moment, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal came out of the kitchen with a tray in each hand. This was the healthy feast that Little Silver had talked about tonight. Broccoli egg drop soup, stir-fried broccoli, wine broccoli, broccoli tempura, chicken stew with broccoli. There was actually one more dish, which was diced broccoli. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had chopped it up and made it into broccoli soup. Loopy Toad was stupefied as it stared at the soup. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. This is Romance of the Western Wing. Chapter 536. Loopy Toad had seen the information on the Battle of Spirit Beasts this time. Furthermore, Loopy Toad's aptitude at the Spirit Beast Assessment Center had been appraised as third class, and Little Master Ling wholeheartedly wanted it to participate in actual combat between spirit beasts, since it could better hone the rapport between its soul and body through actual combat. From the information on the previous competition, Loopy Toad had been at peak third class at that time, and its biggest opponent among all the spirit beasts participating in the competition was a land shark called Aluminum Small Fish. This was a spirit beast that the Aluminum Tree, of the 3 Tree Brothers from Reliance High School, had sent out to participate in the battle. It was at peak third class and was very aggressive. Furthermore, it was amphibious and could fight in a variety of environments. Loopy Toad had been wondering how it should attack in a situation where the other party had an advantageous terrain. But now, this concern was completely dispelled, because who knew that a week later, after soaking in Little Silver's holy beast blood, it would suddenly advance to second class. Refining the Bone King into a magic weapon still had to be considered at length. After all, the raw material was the bone of a holy beast, and a beast king at that, so refining it wouldn't be easy. Little Master's great weapon refining spell was certainly convenient, but Loopy Toad actually couldn't handle an offensive magic weapon that was too powerful. In this case, it usually required a custom-made player like Fatty Luo to step in. It was July 17th on Monday, in the 13th week of the semester. Because the midterm exams were coming up soon, Teacher Pan was always the first to arrive at school these days, and then stood guard in front of the dais like a great Buddha. According to Dopey Gua's description, it was as if Teacher Pan's butt had been nailed to the chair. Except for her hands and eyes, it was as if all her other organs had been petrified. With old Pan standing guard in class, no one dared to move at all, and there wasn't even a sound to speak. This actually gave Wang Ling some peace. In the past, the class would always be stirred up by the 2 masters of rhythm, Dopey Gua and Super Chen. Now, everyone was quiet, which was simply wonderful. But in fact, this silence was only on the surface, because Wang Ling saw that Dopey Gua and Super Chen were chatting on their phones. Super Chen just hid his phone under a book and pretended to flip through it as he typed. Dopey Gua was even more ruthless. He bought a very thick cultivation dictionary, dug a hole in the middle of the dictionary that was just big enough to fit a cell phone, and directly embedded the cell phone inside. Wang Ling. When he was at school, his wristwatch was always turned off, and he basically didn't check it. Super Chen and Dopey Gua were chatting happily in the private chat window, and Wang Ling didn't join in. In any case, Dopey Gua was right next to him, and he could see out of the corner of his eye what they were talking about. This was a group chat that Dopey Gua had created. Wang Ling looked at the number of people online. There were actually quite a few of them. Super Chen. What about Wang Ling? Did you pull him in? Dopigua. He is reciting English beside me. He probably won't look at the group chat, but he might be spying in the dark. Wang Ling. Super Chen sighed. What about Lotus Sun? Aren't you going to pull Lotus Sun in? Dopigua shook his head. This is our men's group. I won't add you. At that moment, Little Peanut sent a message. Both of you better stop. I think Old Pan might have noticed just now. You two are on your own. Super Chen sked. Peanut, you're too timid with the book in the way, it's fine. As soon as Old Pan steps off the dais, I'll immediately put my phone away. The whole thing took less than 2 seconds. I specially trained it at home. Little Peanut. Dopigua. Saying this, Super Chen couldn't help asking. What about you guys? Where do you hide your phones? Dopigua. This master's phone is flawless. I dug a hole in the dictionary and embedded it in the dictionary. Super Chen couldn't help sending a thumbs up. Damn awesome big bro. Dopigua. I wonder where Lotus Sun puts her phone when she's playing with it. At that moment, Little Peanut couldn't help saying, his dad is a school board member. Old Pan won't care. Super Chen and Dopigua. Society. Little Peanut. Do you know that the essay Lotus Sun wrote for her senior high school entrance exam is still in the exhibition hall of selected essays? The title is My Dad, CEO of Huagua Water Curtain Group, one of the top 100 companies in the world. Super Chen and Dopigua. We can't afford to offend her. Unlike Super Chen and Dopigua, Little Peanut stealthily took out his phone from under the table to look at it. Because he was the commissary in charge of studies and was sitting in the first row, Teacher Pan wouldn't look in his direction. But under normal circumstances, Little Peanut wouldn't take the initiative to play with his phone. As the commissary in charge of studies, he had to set an example. As for why he had popped up in the group chat today, it was purely because he felt that something wasn't right about Old Pan's aura, and wanted Dopigua and Super Chen to put their phones away quickly. Little Peanut. Both of you can stop. Old Pan really noticed it. I'm done. I'm turning off my phone. I'm scared. After saying this, he saw that the number of people online in the group chat had dropped by 1. Little Peanut really had turned off his phone. Super Chen snickered. Su Xiao, this coward. Dopigua. Did he forget to add a JPEG to his scared? Just as the two of them finished typing, a murderous aura suddenly rose in the class. BZZT. In a split second, everyone felt cold sweat trickle down their backs. For a moment, Super Chen and Dopigua were stupefied and completely forgot to put their phones away. It could only be said that Teacher Pan was in Teacher Pan 1. As a pioneer teacher at number 60 high school, Teacher Pan's movements were really too fast. From the eruption of her aura to getting up, and then to pulling down all the curtains in the classroom. In the end, she turned off the lights in the classroom. Her entire movement was as smooth as flowing water, and actually took less than half a second. Why was Old Pan so familiar with it? It was very obvious that she was already a veteran of 100 battles. Teacher Pan had used this trick more than once on the students of previous cohorts, and it had worked every time. Furthermore, she had become increasingly proficient at it. The moment Teacher Pan turned off the lights, all the lights in the classroom instantly went out, forming a sharp contrast with the light on Dopigua's and Super Chen's phone screens. The screens weren't very bright, but the contrast was still very obvious on their faces. Right after that, Teacher Pan swept her gaze over everyone in the class. Now those whose faces are glowing, come to my office. Don't tell me you've got water light needles on your faces. That you're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.